Chapter 691. Nighttime. Lying on his bed, Noah stared at the high ceiling, unable to speak for a long time. Even if he wanted to say something now, his voice would be drowned out by the sweet voices around him. It's been a long time since I slept with so many people. That's true. Liaz and Jura, who were wearing see-through pajamas rather than sexy, were huddled together at the head of the bed, chatting about a myriad of topics as if they were about to retire. Even though it's nice to sleep with so many people, how should I put it? As expected, it's still a little cramped, isn't it? Aisha, Genova, and Irina gathered at the end of the bed, all of them expressing their thoughts with a troubled expression. Do you need some water, Sensei? Lord Noah, I have tea here. Kitten and Label squeezed in front of Noah at the same time, one holding a cup of water while the other held a teacup. They tacitly moved in front of Noah at the same time, and when they realized that they were doing the same thing, they fell silent. Then they looked at each other, their gazes becoming extremely sharp, as if sparks could fly at any time from the friction, giving off a sense of danger. In other words, including Noah, there were 8 people squeezed into the bed. Apart from Shiba Yudo, all of the Jemingli family members were present. In Noah's room, on Noah's bed. Every room in the Jemingli residence was rather spacious. Not to mention sleeping. Even if it was used for classes, there would be more than 100 students, desks, and chairs. Naturally, the bed in such a room was extremely luxurious. If 4 or 5 people were to lie down on it, it would definitely be more than enough. However, there were not only 4 or 5 people here, but a total of 8 people. Although the other 7 people were basically very slender, slim, and tall girls, but no matter what, squeezing in such a number of people was not something that could be described with just the word squeezing. Under such circumstances, Kitten and Label could only lie in Noah's arms, causing the 2 little girls to blush in embarrassment. Even so, neither Kitten nor Label had any intention of getting down from Noah's body. Rather, it would be more accurate to say that both Xiao Mao and Label seemed to be rather unhappy that there was another person in Noah's embrace apart from themselves. Such a hindrance. Didn't you just say hindrance? Super hindrance. Do you think I'll pretend I didn't hear that? Go away if you hate it. I won't let you have your way. As the conversation continued, the gazes of the cat and Label became sharper and sharper. Noah could even see the cat emitting blue flames, and the bird emitting scorching red flames behind the 2 of them. The atmosphere was so tense that swords were about to be drawn. Seeing Kitten and Label like that, Aisha, Genova, and Irina reacted differently. I'm so envious that I can actually lie in teacher's arms. Aisha, we can't admit defeat. We should attack now. Irina thinks so too, right? Me? You're leaving that to me? I don't get it. The relationship between the church trio was as good as ever. Even so, Noah had the feeling that Aisha and Irina were showing signs of becoming more dangerous under Genova's leadership. Seeing that the church trio was having a discussion about something, while the cat and bird duo were glaring at each other as if they were bitter enemies, Leah and Junai were looking at Noah with ridicule. Why do I feel like all my family members have been stolen away by teacher? Era. Should I try and see if I can steal teacher instead? Similar arguments were going on all the time. Noah, who was lying straight in the middle of the girls, could only look up and sigh. Why are all of you crowding around me? Hearing this, the group of young ladies stopped what they were doing and looked at Noah one after another. Isn't teacher leaving tomorrow? Junai said with a smile, cupping one side of her face. That's why tonight counts as a farewell to teacher. I want to help teacher, so Genova asked me to come. Aisha looked at Noah with teary eyes and said pitifully, Can't. I can't? I heard that teacher is preparing for special training to defeat the infinite dragon god Orpheus. Genova said with a serious face. Special training to defeat the legendary strongest dragon, that even the gods fear. How can we not come and encourage a teacher like that? Actually, I came because I wanted to encourage you, teacher. Irina smiled sheepishly before sighing. But I don't know how it ended up like this. Little Kitten and Label's answers gave Noah a headache. In order for teacher to better undergo special training, I have the obligation to take care of teacher and adjust teacher's condition to the best. I didn't come here because I can't bear to part with you. Really? Looking at the girls around her, Leah shrugged helplessly in front of Noah. That's right. These children all felt the need to do something because you're leaving tomorrow, so they came to ask me for advice. So I simply brought everyone here. Well, it can be considered as a way to improve the relationship between each other and increase communication. Why don't we sleep together tonight? Noah asked the heavens, speechless. At first, Noah had planned to tell Leah about it and return to the realm of worlds. After all, no matter how long Noah had spent in other worlds, he could choose to return to this world a month later in the timeline. It would only be a month in this world, and there was no need to make it seem like a parting of life and death. That would be quite uncomfortable. In the end, Noah was asked to stay by Leah's parents and enjoyed a big meal, and was kindly persuaded to stay for at least one more day and leave tomorrow. Since he could not find a reason to refuse, Noah could only accept. If he had known that things would become so troublesome, Noah would have just left today. It was not that Noah was repulsed by Leah's group's closeness. It was just that wasn't a little too intimate? Under normal circumstances, no one would want to sleep with a boy in a group, right? However, Leah did not seem to care about this level of closeness at all. She was so calm even when she was naked in front of Noah, that Noah was a little speechless. Of course, it was not just Leah's either. Even Junai and Genova were showing off their delicate bodies in front of Noah without a care in the world. Aisha, Irina, Kitten, and Label were still normal, and would not really be naked in front of Noah. However, be it Aisha or Irina, they were the type who would be foolishly led around by the people around them. With Genova's strange values, Aisha and Irina were also led around in all kinds of ways, and Noah could not take it anymore. As for Kitten and Label, one was a one-track mind, while the other was a tsundere. Noah did not know what to say. Basically, apart from Kiba Yudo, who was not present, none of the Jaimin family was normal. No, Kiba Yudo was not normal either. Noah had unintentionally noticed that Kiba Yudo would sometimes stare blankly at a picture for a long time. And that picture seemed to be of Hyoto Kazunari, right? Noah shuddered at the thought of it. Forget it. Noah rubbed between his brows and said unhappily, if that's the case, let's go to sleep. I won't have the energy tomorrow after being tormented by all of you. Okay, Leah and the girls all responded, and then squeezed together, squeezing Noah in the middle. Noah felt that he should be able to have a good dream tonight, right? After all, regardless of other factors, it must be very comfortable to be surrounded by such a soft touch. The room slowly quieted down. It was unknown how much time had passed before Noah realized it. Two pairs of eyes were staring at him. Sensei. Aisha smiled gently. I'll wait for you to come back. Please come back as soon as possible. Kitten's pretty face was also slightly red. Otherwise, I'll feel very lonely. Hearing that, Noah could not help but stroke Aisha's and Kitten's heads and smile. Sure enough, these two little girls who were living together with him were cuter. Chapter 692. Apart from white, there were no other colors in this world. As usual, in this kind of world, pieces of elf-like feathers fluttered back and forth while emitting a soft white light. Just by looking at this scene, Noah felt as if his soul was being purified. However, when he saw the scene in the other corner, Noah's heart was filled with bittersweet feelings. It was a very unpleasant feeling. Over there, pieces of incomplete feathers were like fireflies that had lost their light. They were rather dim. Every time he saw this scene, Noah's heart would become heavy. This world was indeed affecting Noah's heart all the time. Noah would be happy for those beautiful worlds that exuded his own brilliance, but he would also feel heavy for those incomplete worlds that lost their other halves and were dejected. It was because of these feelings in his heart that Noah would not hesitate to wander around the various worlds in search of those pieces of world fragments. In Noah's view, the worlds in front of him were like pure elves, like innocent and romantic birds that only wanted to fly in this space, in this world, to show their existence. No matter who it was, when they saw an elf that had lost its light or a bird that had lost its wings, they would feel something in their heart, right? Noah was like that. Those incomplete worlds, in Noah's eyes, were like elves that had lost their light or birds that had lost their wings. In order to find their light, find their wings, and return to this pure white world to fly freely. These worlds would ask him for help. Although Noah did not know what he was, how he was born, how he came to this world, and how he had such a relationship with those worlds. However, to find the other half of those incomplete worlds and restore their original appearance, Noah also found the meaning of his existence. At least, the current Noah could tell himself that no matter what kind of existence he was, or how he was born, he had one thing to do: restore each and every world. That's right, that's why I exist. Noah muttered to himself as if he had made up his mind. Images of young girls appeared in his mind, and he smiled. Of course, it's also to stay by their side. After saying that, Noah made up his mind and reached out his hand. Whong! An incomplete feather suddenly appeared in Noah's palm. Like a chick returning to its nest, it let out a joyful cry and trembled all over. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Around them, whether it was the intact worlds or the broken worlds, they were all congratulating and welcoming the return of the world fragment that once belonged to this place. Under such circumstances, an incomplete feather flew out of the group and arrived in front of Noah, as if it couldn't wait any longer. Immediately, the world fragment floating in Noah's palm also flew out, entangling with the incomplete feather, and both of them began to dance in the air. At a certain moment, the two incomplete feathers connected together and fit together perfectly. Ding! With a light sound, the two world fragments finally joined together and restored their complete form. Whong! An extremely bright white light bloomed from the feather, illuminating the entire pure white world. The recovered feather flew in a circle, like a cute puppy, and circled around Noah, before returning to the crowd and joining the vast flock of feathers. In this way, another world was restored by Noah. Regarding this, Noah's face could not help but reveal a smile. Every time he saw this scene, Noah would be touched like when he first restored a world. Perhaps, this feeling would accompany Noah for the rest of his life and would never leave. After all, in terms of the number of worlds here, it would not be an exaggeration to say that there were tens of thousands of them. At least, in Noah's vision, in every corner of the pure white world, there were beautiful feathers blooming with soft white light, and the number was comparable to gravel. And this was only the complete worlds. If he counted the incomplete worlds that were still waiting to be restored, Noah really did not know how many worlds there were in the entire, between the worlds. Therefore, in order to restore the numerous incomplete worlds, Noah might have to spend his entire life on it. Thinking about this, even if he was willing, Noah could not help but feel helpless. Looks like this will be a never-ending job. Of course, Noah did not have the slightest bit of reluctance. Let's hope that one day, I can see the entire world in the between worlds flying in the sky in perfect condition. This was also Noah's wish. However, everything that happened next threw Noah, who had such expectations in his heart, directly into the abyss, as if it intended to consign Noah to eternal damnation, making Noah unable to forget it for the rest of his life. Buzz, 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 buzz. Just as Noah was about to enter the next world, the originally joyful elves and fluttering feathers in the surrounding space seemed to be stimulated by something, and with an unprecedented frequency, they desperately trembled. Buzz, 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 buzz. Like a sheep that met a pack of wolves, the feathers that were blooming with soft and dazzling white light dimmed one after another, as if they were in a panic, and circled back and forth aimlessly. That appearance was simply as if they were fleeing for their lives. Noah's heart shook violently, and all of a sudden he panicked. What's wrong? What happened? No one answered Noah's question. No one could answer Noah's question. Noah could only look with some surprise at the feathers that were flying around, as if they were fleeing for their lives. Because he didn't know what was going on, and because he didn't know what to do, he was completely at a loss. At this moment, an extremely terrifying shadow spread from the bottom of Noah's heart, and also brought a fatal sense of crisis that he had never felt before. A chill began to rise from the bottom of Noah's feet, and instantly flowed throughout his body, hitting Noah's head. Noah had never felt such a strong sense of crisis like this moment. That sense of crisis was so strong that it was almost to the point of desperation. Noah's intuition told him, if he continued to stay here, he would die. Yes, he would definitely die. Noah. At the same time, Two panicked voices sounded in Noah's mind at the same time. Noah, can you hear me? Hearing these two voices, Noah's eyes lit up, and he quickly responded. Gaia. Aleya. These two voices were impressively Gaia and Aleya. However, Gaia and Aleya's voices showed an unprecedented panic, and they shouted in Noah's mind with great tacit understanding. Come to us immediately. Quick. Hearing this, Noah didn't care about anything else. He directly dodged, as if he had already determined a direction, and stretched out his hand and pressed on a feather. In the next moment, Noah's figure disappeared on the spot. It was another pure white world. But this time, this pure white world wasn't the between worlds that accommodated all the worlds, but the world where Gaia and Aleya were located, where Noah had been before. As soon as he appeared here, Noah didn't even have time to make a sound, and a sharp pain came from his chest. Noah's body trembled, and his expression changed drastically. In the end, he was stunned. Slowly lowering his head, Noah looked at his chest. There, two small hands mercilessly pierced Noah's heart, and mercilessly crushed Noah's heart. Noah, Gaia and Aleya both maintained the posture of mercilessly piercing Noah's heart with their hands, and their faces were filled with sorrow. I'm sorry, but for the time being, please go die once. Under such a voice, Noah's consciousness gradually faded away, and the vitality in his body also faded away. At the last moment, what appeared in Noah's mind wasn't anything else, but a picture that looked like a fairy dancing in the air. Chapter 693. What does the so-called death feel like? No one should be able to accurately express that feeling, right? No matter what, for ordinary people, once they die, there's nothing left. The feeling of death is such a feeling. The heartbeat, weight, vision, memory, and everything that can be felt will all disappear in an instant, including consciousness itself. That's right. The so-called death, in fact, is just a feeling of having nothing left. In that case, what was the meaning of life? Is it the feeling of having the heartbeat, weight, vision, memory, and everything that ordinary people can feel? Similarly, no one was able to accurately express this point. The reason is that at the moment of birth, as the life itself, the person who came to this world in the state of a baby can't even feel himself crying. Naturally, he wouldn't know what it feels like at the moment of birth. Now Noah fully experienced this feeling once. This feeling of going from a death that was supposed to be nothing to gradually entering a life that had everything. It was like being pulled up alive after being sunk to the bottom of the sea. The feeling of seeing the light bit by bit made Noah's consciousness recover little by little. When he was about to wake up, Noah, who experienced the feeling of going from life to death, and then from death to life, discovered. In his heart, it was like a fairy flying freely, and a pattern connected to the stone plate was shining. It was the incarnation of the elf. Noah's elf incarnation is a power derived from the fusion of Wellislana's shepherd incarnation, and the regenerative ability strengthened by the protozoan virus. And as the predecessor of the elf, Wellislana's shepherd is an ability that can resurrect the user at the moment of death. Once, Noah also thought that after fusing with the incarnation of shepherd, would his elf incarnation also have the ability to resurrect people? This idea, at this moment, was finally confirmed. So he clearly recalled everything before his death and resurrection. Noah's heart suddenly trembled, and he opened his eyes abruptly. As soon as he opened his eyes, a familiar lively voice entered Noah's ears. Oh, little Noah woke up? Hearing this familiar voice, Noah's heart trembled again, and he quickly sat up. Until now, Noah discovered that he was in the pure white world that he arrived in before his death. The surroundings were snowy white, and in the distance, there was a nebula, but also a whirlpool that slowly rotated. Everything was so quiet. And in this background, two petite girls were floating in the air, looking at Noah with concern. When they saw Noah wake up, one showed a dazzling smile, and the other was expressionless, but the look in her eyes suddenly eased a lot. Other than Gaia and Aleya, who else could it be? Recalling everything he experienced before he lost consciousness, Noah's heart. There, the heart that should have been mercilessly pierced by Gaia and Aleya had already completely recovered, without a single scar. Feeling his heart beating, And then recalling the feeling of his beating heart being crushed by Gaia and Alea before he lost consciousness, Noah could only silently look at Gaia and Alea. To be honest, Noah really didn't believe that Gaia and Alea would kill him. But that was the truth. Noah, who could clearly feel that his sprite incarnation had been activated, could say with certainty that he was indeed killed by Gaia and Alea once. If there wasn't the hidden resurrection effect of sprite, then Noah definitely wouldn't be able to continue standing here. However, Noah couldn't get angry. Noah believed that with Gaia and Alea's ability, they would definitely be able to sense that his sprite could resurrect him, which was why they killed him once. In other words, for a certain purpose, and knowing that he could resurrect again, Gaia and Alea killed him. Therefore, Noah could understand. However, understanding was one thing, but Noah still had some lingering fear in his heart. After activating the hidden resurrection effect of sprite, Noah understood that this effect had to be activated before he died in order to effectively resurrect him. In other words, if before he died, Noah didn't have time to activate the sprite incarnation, then he wouldn't be able to resurrect and would only die. Understanding this point, how could Noah not have lingering fear in his heart? I'm sorry, little Noah. Perhaps Gaia saw the lingering fear in Noah's heart. The lively expression on his face was slightly restrained, and he became a little more serious. At that time, we only had this choice. As expected, the reason why Gaia and Alea killed Noah was because of a certain goal. We did indeed need to do that. Alea seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and indifferently said, "If we didn't erase all traces of your life, then you would have definitely been discovered. At that time, you really couldn't avoid the fate of disappearing." Discovered? Noah's heart skipped a beat as he asked. Discovered by what? Before being called here by Gaia and Alea, Noah did indeed feel that something terrifying was approaching, which made Noah feel a sense of crisis that made him despair. In addition, at that time, the abnormality in between worlds. How could Noah not understand what had happened? After being asked by Noah, Gaia and Alea looked at each other, and actually looked at Noah, revealing a serious atmosphere in their eyes. Go back to Between Worlds, and take a look yourself. Once you see it, you will understand how dangerous it was. Hearing this, Noah had a bad premonition in his heart. It was still the same pure white world. However, after returning to this pure white world, Noah looked at everything in front of him. In his heart, all the emotions were like boiling water boiling. Because what appeared in front of Noah was a scene that Noah couldn't believe. Between Worlds was still the same Between Worlds. The feathers were still the same as before. However, in that place that looked like the ground, something was scattered all over the pure white world. It was still feathers. However, the feathers seemed to have been forcefully snapped off by something, leaving behind only half of the feathers. Without a doubt, the broken feathers scattered all over the ground were world fragments. It was because he clearly understood this point that Noah's heart was boiling like boiling water. There was no other reason. With the addition of the world fragments scattered all over the ground, the intact worlds were reduced to a pitiful state. In other words, the world fragments that were scattered on the ground were the worlds that were still flying in the air a moment ago. They belonged to the worlds that were still intact. What's going on? Noah clenched his fists, trying to suppress the rolling emotions in his heart. What the hell is going on? Although that was what he said, Noah actually had some guesses. I'm afraid that during the period of Noah's death, something happened in the world between worlds, which destroyed all the worlds that were originally intact. At this time, Noah finally reacted. Originally, Noah would go to other worlds to retrieve the world fragments, because the worlds were destroyed, causing half of the fragments to be lost to other worlds. Now, beside Noah, another world was destroyed. It was that simple. Undoubtedly, it was such an easy-to-understand situation, but Noah couldn't control his emotions. Then, what's the point of everything I've done? Noah didn't know how those worlds were destroyed. However, the reason for the destruction of the worlds didn't disappear, it was still continuing. He worked so hard to retrieve the world fragments from one world after another, just in the vain hope that one day he would be able to restore all the worlds to their original state. As a result, in the blink of an eye, a large part of the world was destroyed in front of his eyes. How could Noah control his emotions? How could Noah not doubt himself? The meaning of existence was denied. How could Noah not be shaken? Damn it. Chapter 694. After returning to Gaia and Aleya's world, Noah lowered his head, hiding his eyes and expression under his bangs, making it impossible for others to see his true expression. However, Gaia and Aleya could still sense that Noah's heart was at a loss and not calm. For the first time, whether it was Gaia or the expressionless Aleya, a trace of heartache flashed in their eyes. I know that you must be feeling very sad right now. Aleya, who was an amalgamation of the human unconscious, said in a deep voice. However, we hope that you can understand that your existence is not meaningless. To us, little Noah, your existence is even more important than ourselves and the world itself, Gaia said seriously. After all, even if the world is destroyed, as long as you are here, it can be repaired. However, if you die, all the worlds will never be repaired. All the worlds in the world between will be destroyed one day. Hearing this, Noah still lowered his head. After a while he squeezed out a sentence. What should I do? A trace of heartache flashed in Gaia and Aleya's eyes. Then, they came before Noah and hugged Noah tightly. If the people in this world who knew about the existence of Gaia and Aleya were to know that the consciousness of the planet and the consciousness of humans would actually act so intimately and humanely towards a specific object, they would definitely be shocked beyond words. As existences of suppression, whether it was Gaia or Aleya, they only cared about the factors that represented their own existence. Gaia only cared about the planet itself. Aleya only cared about the human race. This was because if they lost the planet and the human race, Gaia and Aleya would not be able to continue existing. Therefore, as suppression forces, Gaia and Aleya would only consider the world and themselves. They would not display emotions that did not belong to suppression for a specific person. However, at this moment, facing Noah, Gaia and Aleya were like ordinary mothers comforting their children. It was very humane. Under such circumstances, 2 sentences drifted into Noah's ears. One day, you will understand the true meaning of your existence. Now what you need to do is to become stronger like before. That will be enough. These 2 sentences seemed to have dispelled all the shadows in Noah's heart. Finally, Noah found a bit of light and a direction to move forward. Sensing that Noah had regained his self-confidence, Gaia and Aleya smiled at the same time. They let go of Noah and looked straight into Noah's eyes. Little Noah, we can only tell you 3 things. Gaia extended a finger. First of all, because the world between worlds once again ushered in a calamity that led to the collective destruction of the world, many world fragments were lost to other worlds. Some were even lost to the worlds you have been to before. In this world, there is also a peace. The second thing. Aleya continued Gaia's words. Because you, the only hope left in all the worlds, were likely to be discovered. If that happened, you would definitely be destroyed. Therefore, in order to hide your tracks, we didn't hesitate to let you die once. Moreover, there seemed to be 2 separate consciousnesses hidden in your soul. It was very likely that you would be discovered. Therefore, to be on the safe side, we borrowed the power of the origin, to enter your soul and uproot those 2 consciousnesses. Uproot? Noah couldn't help but be shocked and asked with uncertainty. Then Bio and Drake are now. Don't worry, they are fine. Gaia blinked his eyes. Now they are with me. After saying that, Gaia raised one of his hands. On that hand, 2 light dots floated up and down, looking exceptionally beautiful. Your constitution originally had the side that made all external negative energy completely ineffective. Even if it was us, if we didn't borrow the power of the origin, we wouldn't be able to uproot those 2 consciousnesses in your soul. Aleya nodded at Noah. However, getting rid of them is a good thing for you. Your soul was originally the purest and most untainted existence. These 2 consciousnesses residing in it were like adding stains to it. Now that they have been removed, the power of your authority should have increased, and the power of the Horde incarnation should have also changed. We will tell you now, and you will understand when you experience it again. You should also be careful in the future, and don't let your soul be tainted so casually. If Bio and Drake heard this, Wouldn't they cry themselves to death? However, this was the true side of Gaia and Alea. To Gaia and Alea, other than the world itself and themselves, the only thing that they cared about was Noah, this special existence. A mere fantasy breed, like Bio, even if he had mutated due to the existence of a world fragment, wouldn't attract the attention of these two suppressors. As for Drake, it was needless to say. A sky dragon might be tall and mighty in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of these two suppressors, he was only at the level of a small insect. Therefore, these two little fellows will be temporarily stored with me. Gaia smiled as she put away the two light dots. Right now they are only consciousnesses. They will only continue to exist because I am maintaining them. If they go outside, they will immediately dissipate. Before you think of how to deal with them, I will keep them for you. Noah pondered for a moment and nodded without any objections. Then what about the third matter? The third matter is probably a bad thing for you, Alea said. Although some worlds can't avoid being destroyed, some worlds have fortunately survived. Fortunately, our world also escaped this disaster. However, every world is in turmoil because of this. Next, after you descend into the world, you can't use too much power. Otherwise, it will definitely affect the world itself. Can't use too much power? Noah was stunned. Well, to be specific, you can't use too much power that doesn't belong to the world you are in, right? Gaia reminded. In other words, you can't use your authority. Can't use my authority? Noah was truly stunned. It had to be known that almost 90% of Noah's strength was in his authority. If he couldn't use his authority, then Noah's strength might not even be comparable to the highest level of demons, let alone gods and demon kings. It was even possible that he might not be able to compare to Mira and Alusha. This wasn't just a bad thing, it was simply an extremely bad thing. That's because as an outsider, you have just descended into the world. The world in turmoil won't be able to adapt to your strength. If you are a person who already exists in the world, then no matter how strong your strength is, it won't be a problem, Alea said. After you descend into the world itself will try its best to adapt to your strength, just like how the original outsider you will become one of its own. This period will take about a month. As long as you stay in the world for a month, then you will be able to continue using your authority. A month? Noah let out a sigh of relief. If it was just that he couldn't use his authority for a month, then it wasn't a big deal. That's true, but little Noah, at this time when the world is in turmoil, we can take advantage of this opportunity to give you some help. Gaia patted Noah's head. Alea and I are already preparing. After you find the world fragment that was lost in this world, remember to come here and take the gift we prepared for you. It should be able to more or less make up for your strength that can't use your authority. Alea said expressionlessly. For now, just bear with it for a while. Noah nodded. The emotions in his heart had more or less calmed down. If possible, Noah wanted to ask, what was the reason why the world in between worlds was destroyed? But now wasn't the time. Otherwise, Gaia and Alea wouldn't have chosen to hide it from Noah. Then what Noah needed to do was to continue his journey like before. That was all. Chapter 695. Hey, you're pretty cute. You're wearing a uniform. Are you a student from somewhere? How boring is school? Why don't you come and play with us? On a small path, 3 men who looked like ruffians were surrounding a girl wearing a school uniform. Their words were extremely frivolous, and there was a frivolous smile on their faces. Although it couldn't be said to be disgusting, it still made most of the pedestrians who saw the scene frown. However, frowning was just frowning. When the 3 men who looked like ruffians glanced around fiercely, the pedestrians around them seemed to be afraid of getting into trouble and hurriedly left. Seeing this scene, the girl couldn't help but bite her lips slightly, but she couldn't produce any resentful emotions. Because for the girl, being saved by others has been a very extravagant thing since she was a child. Taking a closer look, the girl's appearance was indeed quite sweet and delicate. Not only did she have a perfect face, but she also had a proud figure with a protruding front and back. Her height was normal, but she was still considered tall. Coupled with a head of beautiful black hair that was a little over her shoulders, It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a beautiful girl. If one had to pick out a flaw, it would be that in the girl's perfect face and beautiful eyes, there was an uncontrollable darkness that could be discovered if one were to look closely. And as if she was self-aware of her own darkness, the girl tried to lower her head, burying her eyes and expression under her bangs. This was a sign of inferiority and gloom. However, this performance fell into the eyes of the three ruffians, which made them even more insatiable. "Why aren't you talking? Don't be so scared, we won't do anything to you. If you don't talk, then we'll take it that you agree." Saying such words, the three ruffians were getting closer to the girl. The girl could only retreat again and again, but she didn't dare to raise her head. She didn't even dare to say a word. Even though the fear in her eyes was getting stronger and stronger, she still chose to silently endure. It had to be said that the girl was really quite inferior and timid. For those men who wanted to do something to the girl, this appearance would only encourage the other party's behavior. "So don't waste time here, come play with us." A man finally couldn't help but reach out his hand, as if he was going to grab the girl's hand. Just when the young girl felt that she would not be able to escape this calamity in the end, another hand quietly stretched out from the side. With a grab, it tightly grabbed the hand of the man who had stretched out his hand and forcefully flung it back. He didn't even have time to react. In the next instant, the hooligan-like man who was about to make a move on the girl felt his vision blur, and a feeling of the world spinning suddenly hit him. Bang! Following a muffled sound, the ruffian-like man was violently smashed into the ground with his back to the ground, causing him to emit a bitter cry. His head was also dizzy, and he could not get up again. The sudden turn of events stunned the girl and the other two ruffians. The girl couldn't help but raise her head shortly after. A figure entered the young girl's eyes. You actually dare to make a move?" The other two ruffians finally reacted, and looked at each other with twisted faces. In the end, these two ruffians were greeted with a somewhat pressuring gaze, which made the two ruffians freeze on the spot, and couldn't help but take a step back. As the saying goes, to deal with those rude and unreasonable people, one must be more rude and unreasonable than the other party. In this way, the so-called quality of bullying the weak and fearing the strong would be perfectly displayed by these people. As a result, the remaining two ruffians became timid. They clamored and left behind such ruthless words. Remember this. After saying that, the two ruffians didn't even care about their companions, and ran away as if they were escaping. This made the ruffian who was dizzy from the fall repeatedly curse, but he also left in a sorry state as if he was escaping. The girl stared at this scene in a daze, looking at the person who was standing in front of her, only showing her his back, as if she hadn't reacted to the development of the whole situation. At this time, the person with his back facing the girl turned around, exposing his face to the girl's eyes. Only then did the girl realize. The person had a head of jet black short hair, just like her own, and a pair of eyes as deep as the dark moonlight, making people feel as if they would be sucked into them. Then the person spoke. "Are you okay?" Hearing this voice, the girl finally understood the development of the whole situation. In the end, someone reached out to her. This fact made the girl's heart burst with an indescribable emotion. This emotion was called being touched, because the person who reached out to the girl in front of her told her that she could also be saved. At this moment, the girl lowered her head as if to suppress the feelings in her heart, and said in a mosquito's voice, Thank you. You're welcome." The man who looked not much older than the girl said this sentence. "In the future, be careful, learn to protect yourself." Leaving this sentence, the man turned around and walked in another direction. Seeing this, the girl almost subconsciously spoke. Excuse me, you are." Hearing this, the man's footsteps paused, raised his hand, and waved at the girl. Without saying anything, he walked away without looking back. Although she did not receive any reply, the girl unexpectedly understood the man's thoughts. The man must have felt that they would not have a chance to meet again in the future, so he just walked away, right? To the man who reached out to the girl, perhaps today's matter was just a small interlude in his daily life on a whim. But to the girl, today's matter was very meaningful. Therefore, the girl kept looking at the man's back until he completely disappeared. This was the scene when the young man and the girl first met. And it was also the continuation of the bond that the young man and the girl unintentionally formed a long time ago. Walking on the almost completely unfamiliar road, Noah walked aimlessly, but at the same time, he threw the matter to the back of his mind and immersed himself in his own world. The girl's thoughts were indeed correct. For Noah, encountering such a thing when he just came to this world, and helping someone once was just a small interlude. Right now, Noah was more concerned about the information that Gaia and Aleia revealed to him before he came to this world. When the worlds in the world between worlds were once again destroyed, the world fragments of the destroyed worlds were lost to other worlds, and some were even lost to worlds that Noah had been to before. This world was one of them. Gaia and Aleia said that there was indeed a piece of world fragment that was lost to this world. However, that piece of world fragment not only was lost to a different timeline from the last time Noah came, it was also lost to other parallel worlds. Therefore, in the world that Noah was in, Qingzi and Yuzhu probably still existed, but they were not the Qingzi and Yuzhu that Noah knew. And the time, it had been 10 years since Noah last came. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Gaia and Aleia told Noah that this time, they clearly knew the whereabouts of the world fragment. The conversation with Gaia and Aleia began to appear in Noah's mind. Holy Grail War? Because of this word that Gaia and Aleia had just revealed to him, Noah frowned. In the past, Gaia and Aleia had also imparted this world's knowledge to Noah. Therefore, Noah knew that the Holy Grail here was completely different from the Holy Grail that Noah had obtained. In this world, the Holy Grail was a holy relic that originated from the legend of Christ, and many legends of searching for the Holy Grail were also spread in this world. When the Holy Grail that appeared was determined to be the real thing by the Holy Church, the battle for this holy relic was known as the Holy Grail War. Chapter 696. The so-called Holy Grail was in 333 AD, on the 14th day of the Jewish month of Nisan, which was the Passover dinner before the crucifixion of Jesus. After Jesus sent away Judas Iscariot and his 11 disciples, he used a cup filled with wine. Jesus once picked up this cup and ordered his disciples to drink the red wine that symbolized his blood, thus establishing the crucifixion memorial ceremony. Later, some people believed that this cup had some kind of magical power because of this special occasion. Many legends even spread that if one could find the Holy Grail and drink the water from the Holy Grail, then one would be able to rejuvenate, come back to life, or even obtain eternal life. This was the true origin of the Holy Grail. Noah had been to many worlds, and he had also read about the myths and legends of the Holy Grail in the world of the God-Slayer. He had obtained the Holy Grail from Genevia, and he knew that there were legends of the Holy Grail in many worlds. However, the Holy Grail in the world of the God-Slayer was completely different from the Holy Grail that originated from Christ's legend. In this world, no one knew whether the Holy Grail that originated from Christ's legend really existed or not. However, because of the spread of similar things in legends, many people were also searching for the Holy Grail. Of course, the existence of the real Holy Grail was not even known. Even if it existed, there was only one Holy Grail, and its whereabouts were still unknown. Therefore, when the Holy Grail was confirmed, one of the two major powers in this world, the Holy Church, would go to the place where the Holy Grail was said to have appeared and appraise the Holy Grail. When the Holy Church determined that the Holy Grail was likely to be the real thing, then the battle surrounding the Holy Grail would be held under the supervision of the Holy Church, and then the Holy Church would bear witness to the final winner owning the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail War that Noah knew was such a thing. In short, in this world, in different parallel worlds, in different times, different Holy Grail wars were also going on. Then, which one was the Holy Grail War that Gaia and Aleia were talking about? Could the spoils of war in the Holy Grail War, the so-called Holy Grail, be the real one in Christ's legend? These were all things that Noah wanted to know. Whether it is authentic or not is no longer important for this Holy Grail War that we are talking about. Gaia seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and smiled. That was actually just a ceremony that happened in a small town. The function of that ceremony was to form the Holy Grail. It could be considered as something that played some inconspicuous tricks, right? A small trick? Noah asked. What do you mean? That Holy Grail is actually a hole that opens the path to the origin. It is a ritual that allows the user to gain the opportunity to come into contact with the origin. Alea explained. Humans are always able to come up with unexpected ways to achieve their goals. Similar things happen in every parallel world of this world. For us, it's considered a form of entertainment. Hearing this, Noah rolled his eyes, but he knew that Gaia and Alea were not lying. It must be known that the origin was the source of all things in this world. It was the existence that gave birth to everything in this world. And as a suppressive force, Gaia and Alea could be considered as the guardian and caretaker of the origin. They were the closest existence to the origin. For such Gaia and Alea, using the so-called Holy Grail as a means to open the path to the origin, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small human trick. And then, Noah looked at Gaia and Alea. Is there a problem with the Holy Grail war? If there is a problem, it can be considered a problem. But for little Noah, it shouldn't be a problem, Gaia said with a mischievous smile. It's just that when helping little Noah hide his life signs, Alea and I accidentally observed a world fragment flowing into the small town where the Holy Grail war ritual was held. Hearing Gaia's words, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the world fragment this time was lodged in the Holy Grail? The possibility of this is very high. Alea said expressionlessly. So, if you want to find the world fragment that flowed into this world, the Holy Grail war should be able to give you some benefits. Noah immediately nodded, indicating that he understood. The knowledge related to the Holy Grail war, we will also impart it to you later. Gaia pointed a finger at Noah and mysteriously said this sentence like a little adult. Originally, the way the Holy Grail war is held has something to do with us. However, Alea and I still need to prepare a gift for you. So this time, little Noah, it's better for you to do it yourself. As for the way to participate in the ritual, you don't need to specifically ask. Alea also left this sentence for Noah. The Holy Grail that exists in that town will choose the participants. Although there are so-called rules and precedents, but basically, the more outstanding the magic power, the more likely it is to be chosen. With your magic power, there is no possibility of you being chosen. You can rest assured and stay in that town for a while, and you will naturally obtain the qualifications to participate. Recalling the words of Gaia and Alea, Noah was still flipping through the memories that the two little girls imparted to him and suddenly fell into deep thought. A wishing machine that can fulfill the wish of the holder? The Holy Grail that exists in this town is said to have such a function. Therefore, every time the Holy Grail war arrives, there will be a group of ambitious participants. And this so-called Holy Grail war is the form of 7 magicians leading their respective summoned heroic spirits to fight for the ownership of the Holy Grail. In the end, the surviving victor will obtain the ownership of the Holy Grail. Heroic spirits? Noah could not help but bitterly smile. No wonder this Holy Grail war is said to be related to them. No matter which legend it is, there will always be the existence of a hero. And whether it is in reality or in myths, those heroes who left behind great achievements and were known by the world, or even believed by the world, after passing away, they will become heroic spirits. Usually, heroic spirits are summoned by the world to protect humans. These heroic spirits exist outside the world that has been freed from the shackles of time. When the world needs them, they will be summoned to the ground. The people who manage these heroic spirits are Gaia and Alea. In other words, the so-called heroic spirits, in fact, are Gaia and Alea's hired thugs. The Holy Grail war that existed in this town was a ritual that could summon heroic spirits from the outside world in the form of servants, making them obey the magician who summoned them. Together with the magician who was the master, they would fight against the other participants of the ritual. The idea of using their own hired thugs, and the idea of origin. No wonder Gaia and Alea call it a small trick. With a sigh, Noah threw these thoughts to the back of his mind and patted his face. Let's not care about this. First find a place to settle down. Even if the background of the world is the same, it is a modern world. The money obtained in other similar worlds cannot be used in this world. The reason is that those are all paper money, not printed in this world. If the number and watermark are not matched, then it will only be treated as fake money. Therefore, generally, before Noah goes to the next world, he will exchange the money in his hand for items that can be exchanged for money, such as gold and gems. Finding a place to settle down should not be a difficult matter. In just half a day, Noah found an apartment. Noah deliberately looked for a single apartment, so as not to implicate other ordinary people in the Holy Grail War. Compared to the world of Demon High School, this time the apartment is bigger, with 2 rooms and 1 living room. It is not a problem for ordinary people to live in. After living here, Noah did not rush to replenish the missing daily necessities, but asked the landlord to give him a map to confirm the town he is now in. Then Noah knew. This place is called Fuyuki City. Chapter 697. On the other side, the young girl saved by Noah returned home after a full day of classes. It was a building that could be described as a mansion. It had the feel of a medieval manor and a Japanese-style mansion. Just by looking at it from the outside, it was quite luxurious. However, for some unknown reason, there was a sinister atmosphere that caused this place to become desolate. Very few people would come here. Formally speaking, this was the young girl's home. However, in the young girl's eyes, such a home was like a ferocious beast with its mouth wide open, trying to swallow her whole without leaving a trace. This made the young girl stand in front of her door for a long time, unable to make up her mind to walk in. Upon closer inspection, the young girl's hands were even trembling. Her eyes and face were filled with fear and terror. Such emotions would emerge from the depths of the young girl's heart almost every time she returned. If it was an ordinary person, how could they possibly have such a feeling of fear towards their own home? However, the young girl was like this. There was no other reason. To the young girl, this was not only her home, but also a demon's den of despair. To be honest, it was already a miracle that the young girl did not escape. It was really a miracle. There was absolutely no exaggeration in this statement. Recalling everything that was waiting for her in this demon's den in front of her, the young girl forcefully swallowed the fear and terror in her heart. Her hands were still trembling as she gently opened the door in front of her. What entered the young girl's eyes was a particularly dim entrance. If there was more light, this entrance would definitely be a very warm place. However, in the absence of important light, it was especially dark now. This entrance only brought a sense of terror to people. Even the young girl who had lived here for more than 10 years had to admit that. Her home was definitely a place that no one would want to come a second time. After opening the door, some of the light from outside entered the entrance, dispelling part of the terror. Therefore, the young girl was able to walk into her home with great fear in her heart. Bang! The sound of the door closing could be heard softly. All the light in the room was covered up in an instant, and not a single trace of light could enter the dimly lit hallway. Wang! In the next second, a sound like something was rubbing against something echoed in the air. The young girl seemed to have recalled something, and her face instantly turned deathly pale. Then the girl saw it. Inside the entrance, a large group of insects the size of a human's palm flapped their wings, as if they were locusts that wanted to devour everything. Like a cloud of sand, they fiercely pounced in the direction of the young girl. Ah! The young girl couldn't help but let out a sorrowful cry, and reflexively raised her hand to block in front of her. However, just as the huge swarm of bugs were about to pounce on the girl, a layer of dazzling golden light suddenly circulated around her body. Clang! Like a miniature sun, the girl's entire body emitted a dazzling golden light. The golden light seemed to have turned into pieces of crystal, forming an oval-shaped barrier that enveloped the girl's entire body. Bang! The bugs that pounced in the direction of the girl were all bounced off like rubber balls when they came into contact with the dazzling golden light around the girl's body. In an orderly muffled sound, not a single one was left, and all of them were sent flying, smashing into the walls, the ground, and the door around the entrance. After moving a few times, they stopped moving. The dazzling golden light that enveloped the girl's body dimmed, and instantly weakened by more than half, leaving only an extremely thin and dim layer. At this time, the girl slowly raised her pale face and looked at the bugs that covered the entire entrance. Her face was filled with fear, as if she wanted to stay away from the bugs around her. Then a gloomy voice that made one's hair stand on end sounded from the front. Sure enough, 10 years have passed. Is there some kind of power in your body still protecting you? Hearing this voice, the girl's face became even paler, and her eyes and expression showed even more fear. Under such circumstances, a short figure slowly walked out from the shadows of the front entrance. It was an old man that, like his voice, made one's hair stand on end, and even made one's scalp numb. The old man's figure was very short, and his skin was quite shriveled, like a mummy. His entire body had a rotten and shriveled feeling. In addition, the old man was bald, and a pair of sunken eye sockets. His entire appearance was like a skeleton, but his eyes were emitting a frightening light, which was extremely terrifying. Seeing the old man's appearance, the girl's body trembled, and she lowered her head, squeezing out an extremely fearful voice. Grandfather. Yes, grandfather. In front of her, this horrifying old man who attacked the girl was the girl's grandfather, even if it was only in name. But the old man seemed to not hear the girl's voice, and looked at the girl with a glance. That gaze did not look like he was looking at his own granddaughter, but more like he was looking at a piece of art that he wanted but could not touch. It was full of regret, and also full of covetousness. Turning around, the old man leaned on his walking stick and coldly said, "Come here." The girl's delicate body could not help but tremble. Seeing the old man gradually walking forward, she could only bite her lips, lower her head, and obediently follow. Rustle. It sounded like something was rubbing against something. This kind of sound echoed in the entire space, and it made people associate the word chewing, which was abnormally disgusting. In fact, the object that was making this kind of sound was indeed quite disgusting. It was a whole trough with a diameter of more than 10 meters, and it was a pile of insects that had been crawling and twisting together, vibrating their mouths. These insects were even more disgusting than the ones that attacked the girl just now. They were crawling and twisting in the entire trough, and as their bodies overlapped with each other, they were secreting some kind of liquid, which made the whole space reverberate with a sound that made people have goosebumps. Looking at the trough full of disgusting insects below, even if she was forced to come here almost every day, the girl still felt abnormally frightened. But the old man standing behind the girl coldly said, "Go in." The girl's heart was covered with a layer of deep fear. This sentence, the girl heard it every day, but the girl still could not do it. Who would be willing to enter such a disgusting insect cave? Facing this kind of motionless and trembling girl, the old man mercilessly stretched out his hand and pushed the girl's back heavily. The girl let out a cry of surprise and fell into the insect cave. Rustle. Almost at the same time, the insects that covered the entire insect cave were like flies that smelled blood and quickly crawled in the direction of the girl. Clang! At this moment, that bright and gorgeous golden light once again emerged from the girl's body and covered the girl's whole body. The insects that touched that layer of golden light all seemed to be blocked outside, and no matter how hard they tried, they could not get in. The old man was suddenly speechless with anger. 10 years. I was actually delayed by this inexplicable power for 10 whole years, and I still can't implant the insect into your body. Damn Toshiomi Nagasaka, he didn't even mention that his daughter had this kind of power. What kind of power is this? For this result, the old man had already expected it. After all, as he just said, for 10 whole years, the old man had no way to break through that layer of defense and let those insects touch the girl's body. This caused the old man to be unusually angry. Undoubtedly, normal contact is fine, but if it causes harm to this girl, this power will protect her. How annoying! The old man heavily hit his walking stick, but soon he laughed creepily. But this kind of protection should be coming to an end, right? Saying this, the old man looked at the golden light that surrounded the girl's body. That layer of golden light was gradually dimming by a small margin. After 10 years, this power is finally about to be exhausted, and my plan can be implemented soon. The old man chuckled. You should enjoy your last time as a human, Sakura. After saying that, the old man turned around and disappeared, leaving the girl alone, curled up in a corner. Someone save me. Chapter 698. The next day, Noah woke up with a strange feeling. The sky outside was already starting to brighten, but it was still dawn. There was still some time before the sun really rose. Originally, at this time, Noah should still be asleep. But in his sleep, Noah felt a strange pain in his hand, which made Noah frown and wake up. At first glance, Noah saw the ceiling of the apartment he rented yesterday. Around it was naturally Noah's room. Yesterday, when Noah rented the place, although he didn't have time to buy daily necessities, the apartment was already equipped with necessities such as a bed. So Noah's first choice was to sleep. Don't look at Noah's energetic appearance. In fact, because of the abnormality in the between the worlds, almost 70% to 80% of the worlds were destroyed. The impact on Noah was also quite big. If he did not adjust his state of mind, Noah was worried that it might really affect him. Moving in this world, Noah had to be careful. After all, because of the disaster in the between the worlds, every world was in an unstable state. For an existence like Noah, who carried a huge amount of external power, if he used too much power that did not belong to this world, it would definitely affect this unstable world. So before the world adapted to Noah's existence, it was best for Noah not to use his authority. And this period of time was about a month. In other words, in the first month of entering the world, it was best for Noah not to use his authority. Of course, saying best was because of Gaia and Aleya's words. Listen carefully, little Noah. Although I told you not to use your authority for a month, if you encounter a situation that is enough to threaten you, then do not hesitate and use your full strength. Even if the world is destroyed, as long as you are safe, then it can be repaired. But if something happens to you, then the world really can't be repaired. Your existence is more important than the world. Don't ever forget this. These were the final words that Gaia and Aleya left for Noah. Indeed, from this perspective, Noah's existence was more important than the world itself. Therefore, if necessary, even if the world would be destroyed, for Noah's safety, Gaia and Aleya solemnly told Noah not to hesitate and to go all out. Of course, that was in emergency situations. Noah felt that it was better not to use his authority so casually if it did not threaten his life and the lives of the people around him. Without using authority, Noah could only use the 3 major spells of Enhance Magic and Fairy Tale. As for the 3 major spells of Fairy Tale, the casting time was too long, so it could only be used as a trump card. In this way, Noah could only use the power of Enhance Magic, so he naturally had to be careful. If I use Enhance Magic, my strength should be comparable to Mira and Alusha, reaching the level of an S-rank Archmage and the highest level demon. Noah considered for a moment and roughly understood his current level. I still need to be careful. With this thought in mind, Noah straightened his body and looked at his hand that felt a little strange. Soon after, he raised his eyebrows. On Noah's right hand, the guild emblem of Fairy Tale was quietly branded on it. On Noah's left hand, there was a bruise-like mark. That mark was not there before Noah fell asleep yesterday. So that's how it is. Noah's mouth curved. Is this the command incantation's sacred mark? Command incantation. To put it simply, it was a magic crystal that could appear on the body. It was also said before that the Holy Grail that existed in Fuyuki City would summon heroic spirits from the outside world and let them, as servants, help the magician as the master to fight and win the Holy Grail war. However, no matter what, those heroic spirits were heroes born from various myths and legends, and it was very likely that they would not obediently obey the master's orders. In order to solve this situation, the command incantation was born. It had absolute command authority that could make the heroic spirits as servants obey, and it was the exclusive mark of the participants of the Holy Grail War. Whenever the Holy Grail was about to be born, and the Holy Grail War was about to begin, the Holy Grail that existed in Fuyuki City would give some omens to the magicians who had the ability to become participants, which was the so-called sacred mark. And the command incantation was transformed from this sacred mark. As long as the magician with the sacred mark began to summon the heroic spirits as servants and summoned them, then the sacred mark would transform into the command incantation, giving the participant 3 absolute commands over the servants. Even to a certain extent, the command incantation would also manifest the command itself into power. Commands such as "destroy the enemy with all your strength" would transform the command incantation into a huge amount of magical power and enhance the power of the servant. Commands such as "come here" could also make the servants who were not around to cross the space and directly come to the master's side. Therefore, the command incantation was quite precious. Getting the command incantation's sacred mark meant that Noah was selected by the Holy Grail, and he could start to summon servants and become a real participant of the Holy Grail War. There were only 7 people who could participate in the Holy Grail War. If 7 people summoned servants, then, even if they had the sacred mark, they could no longer summon heroic spirits to participate in the Holy Grail War. In this regard, Noah was not worried. According to the description in the memory, during this time, the Holy Grail should have just gathered the magical power to summon 7 servants and began to choose the participants. I now have the sacred mark. I guess I will be the first to be selected, right? Then, it would not be too late to wait until the evening to summon the servants. However, the Holy Grail is really amazing. It actually engraved the sacred mark on me. I was a little worried that I would mess it up. The sacred mark was the predecessor of the command incantation. The command incantation was the crystallization of magic. Then it was reasonable to say that this crystallization should not be engraved on Noah, who was immune to all supernatural forces except for the mysterious forces that were effective against gods. As a result, the sacred mark was engraved on Noah's body, which really made Noah feel relieved. In addition, the command incantation would be integrated with the magician's magic circuit. The Holy Grail would inject magical power into the participant's magic circuit, thus forming the command incantation. Noah, however, did not have a magic circuit. However, the Holy Grail still gave the sacred mark to Noah. It seemed that the key to forming the command incantation was not the magic circuit, but the magical power. Noah did not have a magic circuit, but he had extraordinary magical power, so he could still be chosen by the Holy Grail, right? No matter what, it is still a hole that can lead to the origin, although it is just a small trick for Gaia and Alea. Leaving such a feeling, Noah lifted the quilt, got up, and walked out of his room. When he came out of his apartment, the sky was already bright. Noah took the map, followed the map, came to the nearest street, and found a restaurant. Although there was a kitchen in the apartment, there was no food in the fridge. With no choice, Noah could only go to the street to fill his stomach. However, rather than a restaurant, it was better to call it a coffee shop. Noah often wandered between different worlds, and often had to entertain, so he did not have the opportunity to cook. Therefore, he generally ate more outside, and after a while he was used to it. After ordering a cup of black coffee and a portion of spaghetti, Noah sat down, supported his chin, and looked through the restaurant's glass window at the pedestrians coming and going on the street outside. At a certain moment, Noah was suddenly startled. On the busy street, a commotion suddenly broke out among the pedestrians, because a man and a woman were standing on the side of the street, seemingly having a dispute. No, rather than calling it a dispute, it would be more accurate to say that the man was cursing at the woman, while the woman lowered her head and silently endured it. Seeing the couple, Noah frowned, glanced at the man, and immediately looked at the woman. That girl. Seeing that the man seemed to be getting more and more agitated, Noah's frown deepened, and he stood up. Chapter 699. TSK. Don't think that you can control me just because you're my sister. Let me tell you, no one can control me. As soon as he arrived outside the restaurant, Noah heard the contents of the boy's scolding of the girl, which made Noah raise his eyebrows. From the content, Noah completely believed that the cause of this scene was just the boy being unreasonable. In fact, this was indeed the case. That person is his sister, right? Why did he suddenly throw a tantrum at his sister? I don't know, it seems like the girl's sister passed on a message to the family, telling the boy to go home early today, and the boy became inexplicably irritable. The surrounding passers-by's discussion told Noah the whole story. There was no doubt that the man was being unreasonable towards the woman. Moreover, the other party seemed to be a pair of siblings. That was to say, this was only a family matter, and outsiders had no reason to interfere. However, it was obvious that the surrounding passers-by seemed to be very disgusted by the boy's unreasonable behavior. The boy didn't even have the slightest bit of self-awareness, and was still cursing at the girl who had her head lowered, silently enduring everything. To be honest, even Noah, after knowing the whole story, felt a little disgusted with the boy. Of course, the most important thing was that the girl could be considered to have met Noah once. Yes, the girl was the girl with black hair that Noah met when he first arrived in this world yesterday, who was being harassed by 3 ruffians. Yesterday, she was harassed by 3 ruffians, and today, she was being unreasonable by her brother? That girl. Why was she so unlucky? Just as Noah was feeling helpless about this, the surrounding pedestrians suddenly burst into an uproar at the next moment. That was because the flustered and exasperated boy, driven by anger, directly pushed the girl. The girl who had been silently enduring finally let out a cry of surprise, followed by a cry of pain. Under the push of her brother, the girl only staggered a little. In the end, the girl seemed to have twisted her ankle. Suddenly, the girl directly sat on the ground, holding one of her ankles, and a trace of pain flashed across her delicate face. What? That boy? Can he be considered her brother? Which family's child is he? Isn't he too uneducated? The surrounding passers-by angrily shouted. Not to mention the surrounding passers-by, even Noah slightly narrowed his eyes and looked directly at the boy. Only then did he notice that the boy had a seaweed hairstyle and wore the same school uniform as the girl. And the seaweed hairstyle didn't seem to notice the surrounding gazes and discussions, and continued to mercilessly scold the girl who was sitting on the ground and holding her ankles. Don't think that you're a little special, I'm telling you, I'm that family's heir. Saying such a sentence, the seaweed hairstyle raised his leg and was about to kick the girl. At this moment, among the surrounding crowd, a steaming disposable cup suddenly flew out, and after a spin in midair, it directly covered the seaweed hairstyle's head. Then, the steaming hot coffee spilled out from the cup, directly drenching the seaweed hairstyle's body. Ah! It's so hot! It's so hot! The seaweed hairstyle immediately screamed, his whole face twisted into a ball, and jumped, and even rolled on the ground. The young girl, who was still covering her sprained ankle, was stunned, because the girl clearly saw that the cup filled with hot coffee was thrown out by Noah, who was in the crowd. And when she saw Noah, the girl was shocked. You are. It seemed that the girl also recognized Noah. Sorry. Noah, who was still in the crowd, shrugged. My hand slipped. From the way he said it, that tone and that performance, anyone could guess that Noah's hand did not slip, but did it on purpose. You bastard. Holding a handkerchief, the seaweed hairstyle carelessly wiped his face, and wiped the hot coffee off his face. He directly raised his fist, and rushed in Noah's direction. The crowd around Noah suddenly screamed and scattered. No. The girl who was sitting on the ground screamed again. Just as she wanted to get up to stop him, the injury from her ankle caused her to sit back down in pain. Among the people present, Noah was the calmest one. The seaweed hairstyle's fist was quite imposing. However, an ordinary student, no matter how good he was at fighting, in Noah's eyes, that fist was more harmless than being bitten by a mosquito. Noah waited until the seaweed hairstyle rushed in front of him, and swung his fist at him, then slightly moved his body to the side. Wah! The seaweed hairstyle's body, who missed his punch, suddenly lost his balance, and his whole body leaned forward. At this moment, Noah did not even turn his head, and directly stretched out a leg, and fiercely tripped the seaweed hairstyle. Immediately, the seaweed hairstyle's whole body rose into the air, and pounced forward. Bang! In the muffled sound, the seaweed hairstyle fell heavily on the ground, and seemed to have hit his head, causing him to howl in pain. Bastard! There is indeed someone who is quite a bastard. Noah held another cup of coffee in his hand, slowly drinking it, and glanced at the seaweed hairstyle. At least, I have never heard of a man who wants to kick a woman's face who isn't a bastard. Not to mention that she is his sister. The seaweed hairstyle's face was extremely distorted because of anger. He struggled to get up, and angrily glared at Noah. However, he did not dare to charge at Noah again, and even a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. Noah, who clearly caught the trace of fear in his heart, felt even more disgusted with the seaweed hairstyle. This was also a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. The seaweed hairstyle seemed to have noticed the trace of indifference in Noah's eyes, and suddenly became even more angry, and even shouted at Noah. Anyway, even if I kick her, she won't hit, so what if I kick her? Hearing this, Noah was a little concerned about the seaweed hairstyle's words. Regardless of the seaweed hairstyle's words, even if I kick her, she won't hit? What does this mean? The seaweed hairstyle, who did not know the doubts in Noah's heart, suddenly sneered, and looked at his sister with a look of a villain who had succeeded. Forget it, your good days are coming to an end soon. When that time comes, I will definitely take good care of you. Leaving this sentence, the seaweed hairstyle glared at Noah hatefully, turned around, and walked away awkwardly. At this moment, the surrounding passers-by started applauding, as if they were very satisfied with what Noah had done just now. However, Noah noticed it. After the seaweed hairstyle left that ruthless sentence, the young lady who was sitting on the ground and holding her ankle lowered her head, her eyes filled with intense sadness, fear, and even despair. That's right. It was fear and despair. It seemed like this was also a person with a story. With this thought in mind, Noah walked towards the young lady and squatted down. How are you? Are you okay? The young lady only reacted after realizing that Noah was in front of her, and looked slightly panicked. Calm down first. Noah laughed bitterly. I won't abuse you like your brother, don't be afraid. No. It's not like that. The young lady said timidly. Brother isn't abusing me. As she said this, the young lady's expression was still very sad. What she said was one thing, but in her heart, she also knew that what her brother did to her would easily cause others to criticize him, right? However, the young lady still chose to speak up for her brother. Isn't he too nice? I won't comment on whether it's abuse or not. You know it in your heart. Noah shook his head and turned his gaze towards the young lady who was holding her ankle. How are you? Can you stand up? Hearing this, the young lady seemed to have realized that she was sitting on the ground, and hurriedly tried to stand up. The pain coming from her ankle made the young girl's body turn and fall forward. And the person in front of the young lady was Noah. Naturally, Noah reached out his hand and caught the young lady who fell into his arms. Feeling the male scent in front of her, the young lady panicked again. I'm sorry. All right, don't apologize. Noah said helplessly. Let me help you to the side to sit down. Chapter 700. Although it was just an ordinary street without any benches, there was a flower bed by the side of the street. Noah helped the girl with shoulder-length black hair to the edge of the flower bed, and had her sit down along the edge of the flower bed. Then, under the girl's gaze, Noah squatted in front of her. Let me see. As he said this, Noah extended his hand and lifted the girl's leg and placed it on his knee. Seeing this, the girl seemed to be very uncomfortable with Noah's actions, and also seemed to be unaccustomed to other people's kindness. She lowered her head and said in a mosquito's voice, That's not so troublesome. What's so troublesome about helping an injured person? Noah didn't even raise his head, and started to gently press the girl's ankle with a practiced hand. Don't look at me like this. I was once a healthcare teacher. If it's just a sprained ankle, as long as there's no problem with the bone, I'll be able to help you heal in a while. Just bear with it for a while. Yes. The girl nodded subconsciously, and then stared blankly at Noah, who was concentrating on pressing her ankle, and suddenly became a little absent-minded. To the girl, this was probably the first time she met someone who helped her purely out of kindness. No, strictly speaking, when Noah helped the girl chase away the 3 ruffians, it was the first time the girl saw someone with kindness and kindness. At that time, even if Noah didn't help, the girl wouldn't have been hurt by the 3 ruffians due to the protection of the mysterious power in her body. However, the girl was still very grateful to Noah. Firstly, it was indeed the first time the girl received help from someone who didn't have any ulterior motives. Secondly, as long as it didn't cause harm, the girl couldn't reject what others did to her. Thirdly, the girl's grandfather and brother clearly told the girl that the mysterious power in her body that had been protecting her for 10 years would be exhausted soon. Every time it protected the girl, the power would be exhausted. Therefore, the girl hoped that, if possible, it would be better to preserve the remaining power. After all, once the power was exhausted, what awaited the girl was a true hell. Thinking of this, the girl's heart was covered with a thick layer of shadow and confusion. Last time and this unfamiliar boy in front of her could still help her. Then next time, when the power in her body was exhausted and she was forced to step into hell, would there still be someone to help her? The girl could only helplessly and confusedly extravagantly. This was because the girl knew that her grandfather was a cruel and heartless person who couldn't be disobeyed. At least, with the girl's power, she couldn't escape the old man's control. Under such circumstances, Noah's help slightly dispelled the shadow in his heart. Naturally, Noah couldn't guess the girl's thoughts. After all, Noah didn't know how to read mind. Noah could only vaguely guess from the girl's behavior that she was a person with a story. At that moment, while rubbing the girl's ankle, Noah spoke coldly. "By the way, what's your name?" This question stumped the young girl. It wasn't that the girl's name was shameful, but the girl was surprised by Noah's sudden question. Yesterday, the girl also tried to ask about Noah's identity after he helped her, but she didn't get any response from Noah. Why did Noah throw this question back at her? Yesterday, I thought that we might not have the chance to meet, so I felt that there was no need to introduce ourselves. This time, Noah could tell what the girl was thinking from her surprised expression and smiled. But today it seems that we are fated to meet. Hearing this, the girl couldn't help but smile. Then she realized that it was a little impolite, so she quickly hid her smile and lowered her head. "My name is Jian Tanjing." "Ing." Noah nodded and said casually. "That's a nice name." Jian Tanjing tilted her head in confusion. Thank you for the compliment." Facing Jian Tanjing's confusion, Noah smiled but didn't say anything. The confusion should be caused by Noah calling Jian Tanjing's name directly, right? In this country, only people who had a very good relationship would call each other by their names. Generally, they would only call each other by their surnames. Noah and Jian Tanjing only met once. Being called by Noah directly, Jian Tanjing would of course feel confused. However, the girl didn't seem to be disgusted, and she still looked at Noah in a daze. My name is Noah Doria." Before Jian Tanjing asked directly, Noah answered. "You can just call me Noah." "Noah." Jian Tanjing said it twice seriously, and after remembering the name in her heart, she fell into an awkward silence because she didn't know what to say. Noah nodded as if he didn't notice Jian Tanjing's awkwardness. "It's just a little sprain. It didn't hurt the muscles and bones. It will be cured soon." After saying that, Noah's hand on Jian Tanjing's ankle began to slowly circulate a trace of magic, and it poured into Jian Tanjing's foot. In the past, when Noah faced such an injury, he would directly use magic to heal it. However, Noah didn't notice. Just as Noah's hand circulated a trace of magic, Jian Tanjing's pretty face suddenly changed, and she immediately lowered her head hard, as if trying to hide something, and stopped talking. After a while, Noah, who felt that it should be enough, stopped the flow of magic and clapped his hands. "Okay, there should be no problem. You can try it yourself and see if it still hurts." "Yes," Jian Tanjing responded and slowly stood up, after shaking the tip of her foot, and found that there was no pain. She bowed her head and thanked Noah. "Whether it was yesterday or today, I am very grateful. It's a piece of cake for me." Noah waved his hand, and then looked directly at Jian Tanjing. "But for you, it seems to be something that is not strange even if it happens every day, right?" Jian Tanjing's shoulders trembled slightly, and she fell silent. Noah spread his hands and said, "Don't worry. Yesterday, I said that you have to learn to protect yourself. If you just bear it, it will only make those who want to see your beautiful face covered in tears even more greedy. After that, Noah turned and walked in the direction of the opposite restaurant. In the future, remember to be careful. Jian Tanjing raised her head and looked at Noah's back as he gradually walked into the restaurant. Her eyes were filled with suffocating sadness. Jian Tanjing also wanted to protect herself. But with Jian Tanjing's strength, she could only hope for others to protect her. Back in the restaurant, Noah, who sat back in his original seat, looked outside through the window. Over there, Jian Tanjing's figure had already disappeared. But Noah did not look away, but kept looking in that direction, his eyes flashing slightly. For some reason, Noah always felt that there was something special about the girl named Jian Tanjing. The special here did not mean that Jian Tanjing was a person with a story, but that there was something special about her. For example, physique. Could it be that the child named Jian Tanjing is a magician? Noah muttered. But there seems to be no trace of magic on the child's body, right? Saying this, Noah was more or less uncertain. There was no way. Jian Tanjing did give Noah a special feeling. And because he was severely beaten by Orpheus in the world of Demon High School, Noah was no longer so confident in his sensing ability. So when he said this, Noah's tone was full of uncertainty. Also what the child's brother said, I don't know why, it's a bit worrying. Anyway, I can't kick it? Why was the seaweed head so sure that he couldn't kick it? Was Jian Tanjing 100% sure that she would dodge? That shouldn't be the case, right? That was the reason why even if the seaweed head kicked Tama Tanjing would not be kicked. I've only been here for less than 2 days and I've already encountered such an interesting thing? Noah, who couldn't figure out why, suddenly smiled. This Fuyuki city really hides a lot of secrets. Chapter 701. The sky gradually darkened. After a whole day of classes, Tatsuki Sakura once again returned to her gloomy home with a heavy heart. Today, Tatsuki Sakura's fear of her home reached another level. There was no other reason. Tatsuki Sakura knew that after today's events, her brother's mood would probably be worse than before, and he would also be more hostile to her than before. In addition, Tatsuki Sakura also knew that her grandfather was now constantly hoping that the power in her body that had been protecting her would be exhausted and be eroded by those insects. This made Tatsuki Sakura even more afraid. Noah's feeling was correct. Tatsuki Sakura was indeed somewhat special. Just as Noah felt, Tatsuki Sakura wasn't a magician, but it couldn't be said that she wasn't a magician, because Tatsuki Sakura was indeed born in a magician family. However, Tatsuki Sakura wasn't born in the direct bloodline of the Tatsuki family. Instead, she was born in the bloodline of another magician family. From the moment she was born, the blood of a magician flowed in her body, and she had a very outstanding talent for magicians. However, fate played tricks on people. The most fundamental inheritance of a magician family was the magic seal. It was a treasure left behind by the members of a magician family for generations, who had spent their entire lives developing the magic they had learned to the extreme, researching it to the point where it was enough to crystallize and pass it on to the next generation of children, so that the next generation of children could continue their own research, hoping that one day, there would be a descendant who could reach the origin and leave behind a treasure. The ultimate goal of a magician was to reach the origin. Therefore, the magic seal, that could allow one's achievements to be passed down from generation to generation, and increase the probability of their descendants reaching the origin, became the most fundamental and important inheritance of a magician family. Naturally, a magician family would only leave behind one magic seal. In this way, when there were 2 descendants in one generation, and both of them were very outstanding magicians, the cruelest thing for a magician family would happen. Just like Aoko and Chung, for the sake of the Aozaki family's magic seal, they were forced to the point where they had to kill each other. This was the most unavoidable and cruel problem for a magician family. If one of the descendants' magician talent wasn't very good, then it didn't matter. But if the 2 descendants' talents were exceptionally good, then, in order to choose the most suitable successor, the family would often kill each other. Tatsuki Sakura was born in such a family. He had an exceptionally talented elder sister, and his own talent wasn't any worse than his elder sister's. As a result, the most fundamental problem of the magic family was born. Tatsuki Sakura was both lucky and unlucky. Tatsuki Sakura didn't need to kill her sister. Tatsuki Sakura's father, Tatsuki Sakura, and Sakura, Tatsuki Sakura, because of the magic seal. Tatsuki Sakura, Sakura ki Sakura. Therefore, her father was not the kind of person who would not hesitate to let the sisters kill each other for the sake of the family and the inheritance of magic. That was indeed Tong Ying's luck. Tatsuki Sakura after all. Tatsuki Sakura's father had always been a magician. Even if there was a father who couldn't bear to let his children kill each other, there was also a side of him who would do anything for the sake of the inheritance of magic. In order not to waste Tatsuki Sakura's talent, which was not inferior to her sister's, Tatsuki Sakura's biological father adopted Tatsuki Sakura to the Tatsuki family, which had no suitable magician descendants, and let Tatsuki Sakura successfully step into hell. The head of the Tatsuki family, the old man named Tatsuki Sakura, was Tatsuki Sakura's nominal grandfather. Because Tatsuki Sakura's own attributes were not in line with the magic system of the Tatsuki family, he intended to implant a low-level servant called the imprint insect into Tatsuki Sakura's body and forcibly transform Tatsuki Sakura. There was no doubt that this was an inhumane practice. However, Tatsuki Sakura didn't care about this at all. For 10 years, he was thinking about transforming Tatsuki Sakura's body almost every day. However, when Tatsuki Sakura planned to transform Tatsuki Sakura's body, some kind of power hidden in Tatsuki Sakura's body suddenly appeared and protected Tatsuki Sakura from being directly persecuted. This protection lasted for a full 10 years. Because she had not accepted the transformation of her body for 10 years, naturally, Tatsuki Sakura did not inherit the magic of the Tatsuki family that was not in line with her own attributes. Under such circumstances, even if she had the talent of a magician, Tatsuki Sakura could not become a qualified magician. There was more or less magic flowing in her body, and some of the magic circuit had been opened, but it was pitifully small. It was because of this that Noah could not feel any trace of magic on Tatsuki Sakura's body. It was also because of this that once the mysterious power that protected Tatsuki Sakura was exhausted, then what awaited Tatsuki Sakura was that her body was implanted with the imprint insect, and she was forcibly transformed into an inhuman by others. How could Tatsuki Sakura not be afraid? In order to exhaust the power that protected Tatsuki Sakura in her body, Tatsuki Sakura would attack Tatsuki Sakura almost every day, making Tatsuki Sakura live in fear every day. This was not a big deal. As long as she could not be transformed, Tatsuki Sakura would be satisfied even if it continued like this. The problem was that that power would eventually be exhausted one day. This was what Tatsuki Sakura was really afraid of. Even so, Tatsuki Sakura still could not escape. Yes, it was not that she did not want to escape, but that she could not escape. She did not inherit any magic, and there was only a trace of magic flowing in her body that even Noah, who had extraordinary sensing ability, could not detect. Tatsuki Sakura could not defeat her grandfather who was almost a demon and had extraordinary magic ability. This was the reality that Tatsuki Sakura could not escape. At the moment, Tatsuki Sakura could only swallow the fear in her heart as usual, open the door and walk into the entrance. It was almost a daily occurrence. Buzz! In the air, a large group of locust-like insects flapped their wings and vibrated in the space, rushing fiercely in the direction of Tatsuki Sakura. Tatsuki Sakura was unable to make a sound, and could only subconsciously raise her hand in front of her body. In the next moment, some kind of power that existed in Tatsuki Sakura's body would appear to protect Tatsuki Sakura, right? However, today an accident happened. Clang! On Tatsuki Sakura's body, an unprecedentedly strong golden light suddenly bloomed, instantly illuminating the entire Tatsuki Sakura's house. Under the illumination of the bright golden light, those demonic insects did not even have the chance to rush in front of Tatsuki Sakura. All of them seemed to have been hit by something heavy. In the creepy screams, they were directly annihilated into nothingness because of the impact of the rebound. Seeing this, Tatsuki Sakura was stunned. And in the depths of the Tatsuki Sakura's house, an old voice roared hysterically. How is it possible? How is it possible? Why? Why? Why is that mysterious power revived again? That's right. It was revived. After a full 10 years of consumption, the power that should have been exhausted was restored today. The golden light that was fading became as bright as the sun, without the tragic appearance that was about to disappear yesterday. This is impossible. This is impossible. My plan. My plan. The old and gloomy voice reverberated in the surroundings, accompanied by a dense swarm of insects flying out from the depths of the Tong family. Like moths flying into a flame, they crashed into the incomparably bright golden light one after another, and were ruthlessly annihilated by the rebounding force on it, leaving not a single trace behind. Seeing this scene, feeling the extremely bright light around her, plus Tatsuki Sakura's hysterical performance in words, how could Tatsuki Sakura not understand what had happened? A long-lost happiness attacked Tatsuki Sakura's whole body, making Tatsuki Sakura slowly sit on the ground, holding the body that was emitting golden light, closing her eyes and shed a tear. Miracle. This was a miracle. But why was it like this? For no reason, Tatsuki Sakura recalled the scene this morning when the boy named Noah injected magic into her body. Could it be that Noah had saved him again? Chapter 702. Noah didn't know what happened to Tonin Sakura. After all, Noah was not a prophet. It was impossible for him to know that Tonin Sakura was suffering a tragic fate. It was even more impossible for him to know that because of his relationship, the tragic fate that should have befallen Tonin Sakura was distorted to a point where it could still be saved. Noah, who didn't know this matter, spent a whole day walking all over Fuyuki City and memorizing the terrain of Fuyuki City, so as not to make a fatal mistake during the Holy Grail War, because he was not familiar with the terrain during the Holy Grail War. After walking all over Fuyuki City and memorizing the terrain, Noah went to several grocery stores and bought some things. The things he bought were mainly fresh blood of raptors, mercury for storage, melted gems, and other items. These items were used to draw the magic circle needed to summon servants and become the master of the Holy Grail War. The servant was the servant who was the hero. The master was the magician who was the master. Before entering this world, Gaia and Aleya had already instilled a lot of knowledge about the Holy Grail War in Fuyuki City into Noah's mind. Therefore, Noah clearly knew how to summon servants and become masters. As long as you know how to build the magic circle, you know the spell to summon servants, and you have the mark of the Holy Grail somewhere on your body, you can summon servants. This is the magic of the Holy Grail. Originally, with the ability of human beings, it is absolutely impossible to summon the hero that only appears when the world needs it. Human beings can only summon the avatar of the hero that appears as a servant. However, even so, it takes a lot of effort, perseverance, and a large-scale ceremony to summon the hero that appears as a servant. Under such circumstances, the Holy Grail can summon the avatar of the hero that exists outside the world for the magician to use. In other words, it is not the magician who really summons the servant, but the Holy Grail. The magicians could only summon the servant with the help of the Holy Grail's enormous magic power. Because of the existence of the Holy Grail, the extremely complicated magic ritual that was originally required to summon a servant, the spiritual and physical compatibility between the heroic spirit and the summoner, and most importantly, the catalyst that had a deep affinity with the heroic spirit were all eliminated. Therefore, summoning a servant was a ritual that was beyond the reach of humans, but the assistance of the Holy Grail made it possible. Since the summoning itself was done by the Holy Grail, Master did not need to hold such a large-scale ceremony. After summoning the servant, the Holy Grail would be responsible for consuming a large portion of the servant's magical power that was beyond the reach of humans. The master magician would consume a small portion of the remaining magical power as the source of the servant's power and existence. After preparing the necessary items, Noah returned to his home when the sky turned dark. Right now, it was still far from the time for other families to fall asleep. However, as soon as Noah returned home, he immediately closed the door, windows, and all the air vents. He then turned off the lights, causing the entire apartment to be plunged into darkness. Soon after, Noah mixed the blood of the raptors, mercury for storage, melted gemstones, and other materials that he had prepared in the vast area in the middle of the living room. He then began to draw a magic array according to the memories that Gaia and Aleia had instilled in him. In the space without a trace of light, the dark red blood, the bright mercury, and the resplendent gemstone solution emitted a faint luster. Although it was Noah's first time carving such a magical array, it didn't take long for him to complete the carving due to the fact that he had a vivid memory of it. A faint light blossomed from the magic array that had been engraved. Looking at the magic circle that he drew in the middle of the living room, Noah smiled slightly. Originally, I still need to prepare the catalyst, but I am not obsessed with summoning a heroic spirit, so I'll just skip it. Because of the assistance of the Holy Grail, summoning a servant basically did not require any conditions. However, if there was a particular heroic spirit that you wanted to summon, then you must prepare something that has a deep relationship with that heroic spirit as a catalyst. Only then can you summon it. And in the case of not preparing a catalyst, the summoned servant will be the heroic spirit that has the best compatibility with the summoner, but it cannot guarantee combat power. Therefore, generally, magicians who seriously wanted to participate in the Holy Grail War and would prepare the corresponding catalysts in an attempt to summon the most famous and powerful heroic spirits. Noah did not have a catalyst that had a deep relationship with any heroic spirit. In addition, Noah did not particularly care about combat power. Instead, he was free and easy. I wonder which class of servant will be summoned. Noah was somewhat looking forward to this. The so-called ranks were the vessels prepared for the heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail, in the Holy Grail War, to descend into the world as servants. The classes were basically divided into 7 classes. Saber, Knight of Sword. Lancer, Knight of Spear. Archer, Knight of Bow. Rider. Caster, Magician. Assassin. Berserker. Because the classes were not allowed to be repeated, therefore, in the Holy Grail War, there were generally only 7 servants that could appear in the world. All of them were of different classes. The heroic spirits that were summoned would be determined according to their characteristics, and then they would be summoned as a servant of the corresponding 7 classes. Among them, Saber, Lancer, and Archer were also known as the 3 Knights. Most of them were the heroic spirits of the gods who existed in large numbers in magic. Therefore, they had an ability called magic, which could render most magic ineffective. Because of this, the 3 Knights were basically the 3 strongest of the 7 classes, and Saber was known as the strongest of all the servants. It was conceivable that many people would be looking forward to what class of servant they would summon. Then let's start. After suppressing the rest of the emotions in his heart, Noah opened his hands and closed his eyes. In his mind, the spell used to summon the servant automatically appeared, and Noah almost subconsciously chanted it. Declare. Thy body is under me, my fate is on thy sword. If you obey the call of the Holy Grail, this righteousness respond to me. I hereby swear. I am the one who achieves all the good deeds in the world. I am the one who conveys all the evil in the world. Entangle the 3 spirits of words for 7 days, from the Wheel of Inhibition. The guardian of the Libra, it was like a song from ancient times, wandering in the entire space. Clang! The magic circle in front of Noah bloomed with bright light. With Noah's sensing ability, he could naturally feel that there was an extremely large amount of magic forming in the magic circle, and condensing into a solid entity. Buzz. However, in the next moment, something in Noah's pocket also made a trembling sound. Noah was startled at first, then finally remembered something, and quickly took out an item from his pocket. It was an obsidian badge. Gorgon's stone. Noah was suddenly stunned. Could it be? Before he finished speaking, in front of him, the huge amount of magic that gathered together instantly condensed into a light source. A shockwave composed of pure mana spread out from the magic array, spreading in all directions. The shockwave even stirred up a cloud of dust, covering the entire space like a sandstorm. Under such circumstances, Noah saw it. In the magic circle, a figure quietly emerged. Chapter 703. The storm that swept out from the colorful magic circle began to gradually calm down, and the dust that shrouded the entire space dissipated. Noah waved his hand to disperse the dust in front of him. He held the Gorgon stone in one hand, looked up, and looked forward. He saw that on the colorful magic circle, a tall figure gradually walked out. It was a woman who was filled with a strange and silent atmosphere. Her figure was very tall and voluptuous. She wore a tight black dress that exposed her shoulders and thighs. However, she also wore long black sleeves and long stockings that covered her thighs. At the same time, she showed a charm that made people's blood boil. At the same time, she also gave people a sense of sacredness that could not be violated. The most conspicuous thing was that she also had extremely long purple hair that was almost as long as her height. In addition, she also wore a shield around her eyes, which tightly covered her eyes, not revealing the slightest gap. Noah even doubted that she could see the surrounding scene. However, he didn't know what method she used, but she didn't feel like her vision was blurred at all. She walked out of the magic circle with strong and clear steps and came in front of Noah. For a moment, Noah clearly felt that she seemed to be sizing him up. Undoubtedly, her eyes were all covered by the shield, but Noah could still feel her gaze, which was indeed quite strange. Is this a heroic spirit that came to this world in the form of a servant? At the same time, Noah felt a burning pain on the back of his left hand, which made him shift his gaze to the back of his left hand. There, he didn't know when, but a mark replaced the original bruise-like mark and was branded on the back of Noah's left hand. It was a vermilion mark with two twisting snakes climbing up along a sword-shaped mark in the middle. Needless to say, that was a command spell that had absolute command over the servant and could be turned into pure power to assist the servant. The servant that appeared from the magic circle also seemed to notice the command spell on the back of Noah's hand. She raised her head and looked at Noah. "Servant Rider, I'm here to answer your summons." "Rider?" Noah's heart skipped a beat. "Are you a rider's servant?" The rider's servant nodded gently, which made Noah fall into deep thought. Rider. That was a title that could only be obtained by a legendary heroic spirit that had a deep relationship with a certain mount, whether it was a creature or a tool. As long as the heroic spirit could ride and control the mount, it was possible to obtain the title of rider. There was no doubt that the heroic spirit in front of him was such an existence. Although it was not one of the famous 3 knights, and its combat ability was certainly not as good as Saber, Lancer, and Archer, who were seated players in the Holy Grail War. But with the performance of those mounts that had a deep relationship with it, Rider was still a very powerful heroic spirit. A heroic spirit that had a deep relationship with a certain mount? So let me guess your real name? Noah clenched the Gorgon stone in his hand and smiled bitterly. You are the youngest of the 3 Gorgon sisters, the famous banshee in Greek mythology Medusa. With such a sentence, Noah looked directly at Rider in front of him. Am I right? For a moment, Rider was slightly startled, but then nodded silently confirming Noah's guess. Sure enough, when the Gorgon stone started to act strangely, Noah had already expected it. After all, the Gorgon stone was originally a part of Athena's snake, and it represented the power of Medusa's divinity that Athena had lost. In this world, Athena and Medusa were 2 completely different characters. But Noah's Gorgon stone originally represented snake, so the one summoned was not Athena, but the orthodox Medusa in Greek mythology, who was originally a goddess, but later turned into a banshee by Athena. Was it a coincidence? Or was it inevitable? Noah did not expect that in the end, he would rely on the forgotten Gorgon stone to summon Medusa in this world. However, Noah did not feel dissatisfied. After all, Medusa was also a very powerful existence. I am Noah Doria. After putting away the Gorgon stone again, Noah looked directly at Rider, the beautiful banshee in Greek mythology, and smiled. Then, until the end of the Holy Grail War, I will have to trouble you to accompany me, Medusa. The heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail will be given the knowledge of this era. Therefore, Rider must also know what situation she is in now and what era she is in. So there is no need to be polite. Anyway, everyone knows each other's situation. Hearing Noah's words, Rider just looked at Noah quietly, and after a while, a very shallow smile appeared on her face. Understood, master. After completing the summoning of the servant, Noah turned on the lights in the apartment again, opened the curtains, opened the windows, and restored the whole apartment to its liveliness. Then Noah sat on the sofa, looked at Ryder, who was still standing in the same place, and said, "Medusa, come and sit down." Hearing this, Ryder shook her head. "I am your servant. I will not be on the same level as you. Master only needs to give me orders." Noah raised his eyebrows. This Medusa was quite easy to talk to, and she didn't put her position too high. As a servant, she was very dutiful. You know, servants are famous heroic spirits in myths and legends, and most of them are difficult to listen to the magician who is their master. Medusa was so easy to talk to, which also avoided the unpleasant result of the contract with Noah. And Noah could also avoid wasting the command seal. "So Medusa," Noah asked aloud, "I should be supplying magic to you now, right?" "Yes, master's magic is flowing into my body." Ryder's voice began to sound. "Master should be able to see my ability value as a servant, right?" "Ability value?" Noah reacted, looked at Ryder, and his eyes were covered with a layer of light. In the next moment, a stream of information flowed into Noah's mind. Rank, Ryder Master. Noah Doria real name, Medusa attribute, Chaos good ability value, Strength, B durability, B agility, A magic, A++ luck, A+ noble phantasm, A+ rank skills, magic power, B can nullify magic with less than 3 levels. Even if it is a big magic or ritual spell, it is difficult to cause damage. Mount, A+. This level of ability was no longer limited to specific beasts or mounts. Instead, it was omnipotent to the extent that it could be freely used on almost all beasts, including illusory beasts and divine beasts. However, with such an excellent riding ability, only the dragon species could not be used. Preservation skills, Magic Eye. A+. Even in the Magic Eye, it is equivalent to the highest level of petrification Magic Eye. It is believed that it is impossible to reproduce magic. Those who are caught by the Magic Eye will be petrified unconditionally if their magic power is below sea level. Those who are B-level must be exempted to determine whether they are petrified or not. Although it can't petrify those who are A-level, it will bring the effect of heavy pressure on the other side, causing all their abilities to drop by 1 level. Solo action. See, even if the master's magic power supply is interrupted, it has the ability to temporarily act on its own. Level C, if it loses the master, or if the contract is abolished, it can last for about a day without magic power supply. Monster strength. B, although it is a heroic spirit, it has the characteristics of a monster. If it is used, it can temporarily increase the strength, but it can't last for a long time. The duration depends on the level. Divinity. E, originally a beautiful goddess. Because of this, it originally had a very high divinity. However, because it later turned into a monster, the divinity when it was a goddess was mostly eliminated. Although it was very weak, it still remained. Chapter 704. The servant's ability would be digitized. Magicians, as masters, would gain the additional ability to detect the servant's ability value at the moment of summoning the servant and becoming a master. Therefore, under this additional ability, all aspects of Ryder's ability value were directly presented in the form of numerical value and text in front of Noah's eyes. It needs to be explained here that ability value refers to the value of the servant's body and ability in all aspects. Strength represents the strength of the physical strength. Durability represents how much damage it can withstand. Agility represents the speed of agility and reaction. Magic represents the quality of the magic that can be manipulated and held. Luck represents the good or bad luck. Noble phantasm represents the strength of the noble phantasm. Rank skills refer to the skills that will be given to the servant of that rank. For example, the servants of the 3 knights all have the rank skills of magic power. Ryder also has the rank skills of riding. Even if the servant itself does not have the ability, as long as the servant of that rank in the Holy Grail War, it will be given the ability of the designated skill. In addition, The defensive skills refer to the skills that the servant originally has. For example, Rider's Magic Eye is an ability that it has, even if it has been shown countless times in its lifetime. It is a skill that no one else has. As for the Noble Phantasm, it is something that Noah is familiar with. That was the strongest weapon a heroic spirit could wield. It was mentioned in the legends of the heroic spirits. Originally, it only existed in myths and legends. It had the same functions and abilities as myths and legends. It was a miracle of materialization that was born from the imagination of humans. Noah also has a noble phantasm called Avalon. Therefore, Noah is very clear about how powerful this treasure is. It is not an exaggeration to say that this treasure is the trump card and the strongest power of the heroic spirit. Whether it is ability value, rank skills, defensive skills, or noble phantasm, all of them have their own rank. The rank is basically divided into 5 ranks: A, B, C, D, and E. Among them, A is the highest rank, and E is the lowest rank. In numerical terms, if the numerical value of E was assumed to be 10, then as the level increased, every level increased by 10, D would be 20, C would be 30, B would be 40, and A would be 50. As for A+, B+, C+, and other grades with a plus in them, their value could be multiplied in an instant. For example, a grade C+ could be multiplied in an instant, from a value of 30 to 60, thus surpassing the A grade of 50. And so on. Plus could triple in an instant. As for the dash, it usually meant that in terms of judgment, it was at the right level, but in terms of ability, it was still a bit off, so it was an unstable numerical value. Generally speaking, a B rank was not a B rank, but it was still higher than a C rank and did not belong to the C rank. In addition to the 5 levels of A to E, there was also the level of EX. This level usually meant that they were so strong that there was no point in comparing them. Generally speaking, a grade A was already the highest level, and the numerical value was also 50. Those who exceeded the specifications of this highest level would be represented by EX. In other words, from 51 to infinity, the numerical value belonged to the category of EX. This EX level was also the highest symbol that could be used to express the ability of a servant. From this point of view, it could be seen how amazing Rider's ability value was. His strength and durability were still acceptable, but his agility was at the highest grade A level. His luck and noble artifact were also at grade A level. His magic power had even reached the grade A level, being able to triple his strength in an instant and become a value that was really beyond his expectations. Noah was very surprised. Of course, regardless of the other ability values, the reason why Rider's magic was so high was entirely because of Noah, its master. After all, the strength of a servant was generally directly linked to the strength of the master's magic. The more powerful the master's magic was, the more powerful the servant would be. Therefore, other ability values aside, Rider's magic was so foul, it must be related to Noah. Master's magic is quite amazing. Rider said, I have absorbed as much magic from Master's body as possible, but at the level of a servant, absorbing this level of magic is almost the limit. There is no way to go higher than this, and with this level of magic, it is quite helpful in battle. Wasn't it? As a heroic spirit that shouldn't exist in this world, even if it came in the form of a servant, it required an extremely large amount of magic to maintain its existence. In this regard, the Holy Grail was responsible for consuming most of the magic. As the master, Noah didn't need to consume much magic to maintain Rider's existence. However, even so, the benefits of large-scale magic were unimaginably great. For example, when a servant was fighting, whether it was to exert direct combat power, or to use skills, or noble phantasm, they all needed to consume magic. The more magic there was, the more complete the combat power that could be exerted, and the number of times that a servant could use skills, noble phantasm, and noble phantasm would increase. In terms of the result, it was not an exaggeration to say that the amount of magic directly determined the outcome of the battle. Therefore, some unscrupulous masters would even let their servants attack ordinary people, absorb the vitality of ordinary people, and turn it into magic for their own use. Master seems to be able to handle it with ease. It seems that Master's magic is above my imagination. Ryder said. With this level of magic as a reserve, I can probably use Noble Phantasm without restrictions. In my opinion, with such an advantage, Master's chances of winning this Holy Grail war are very high. Noble Phantasm was the trump card and the strongest means of a heroic spirit. Being able to use the trump card and the strongest means without restrictions? Just think about it and know how big the advantage is. What is your Noble Phantasm? Noah asked with some doubts. I can see your other ability values, but I can't see the details of your Noble Phantasm. Noble Phantasm is the servant's last resort. Ryder replied. Even if you have the ability to detect the servant's ability value, any master can't see the information of the servant's Noble Phantasm. It's amazing that Master can even see my noble skill. Noble Phantasm's own skill. Some servants' noble skills could even reach the level of Noble Phantasm, and when used in battle, it would have amazing effects. Therefore, in general, masters can't see the Noble Phantasm's Noble Phantasm, and even few people can see the Noble Phantasm's Noble Phantasm. Noah could directly peek at Ryder's Noble Phantasm, probably because Ryder was Noah's servant. Then, Ryder also truthfully revealed his Noble Phantasm to Noah. After learning about Ryder's Noble Phantasm, Noah was a little surprised. It seems that your Noble Phantasm and Noble Phantasm are very good. Yes. Ryder answered truthfully. However, compared to that, my direct combat power is relatively weak. If I don't use my Noble Phantasm and Noble Phantasm, it is estimated that I can't compete with the 3 knights. Master, please decide the future combat policy in this regard. At this point, Ryder added another sentence. In addition, please call me by my rank in the future. The servant's real name can't be revealed casually. Otherwise, it will only be used by the enemy. Servants were famous heroic spirits in myths and legends. Under such circumstances, the more famous a hero spirit was, the more people would know about it, including the effects and functions of its skills and relics. Even its weaknesses would be recorded when it was alive. Everything would be exposed as soon as its name was exposed. In this case, if the enemy caught this information, it would be too bad for the battle. Okay, Ryder. Noah stood up and walked to the window. Looking at the starry sky outside, his eyes flickered. Next, we have to wait for the 7 servants to gather in Fuyuki City. Chapter 705. The next day, waking up from a deep sleep, Noah, who recalled what happened last night, kept lying on the bed and raised his left hand. On the back of his hand, there were 2 snakes coiled around a sword, intertwined with each other, facing each other at the hilt of the inverted sword. The snake's tongue was imprinted on it, telling Noah that what happened last night was indeed not a dream. Noah had summoned a servant and became a master. Moreover, the one summoned was the Medusa of this world who had some relations with Noah, Athena, and the Medusa of this world. With Ryder's rank, the famous banshee in Greek mythology, Medusa, became Noah's servant, serving Noah during the Holy Grail War. With Medusa as a servant, coupled with Noah's almost limitless storage of mana, even the silent Ryder claimed that her chances of winning were very high. It was conceivable how much the master's ability affected the servant. Of course, in terms of magic attainment, Noah only knew enhanced magic. Although it was possible to rely on the frightening amount of mana to release the equally frightening might of the mana cannon, the simple processing of mana before firing it could be said to be the most basic of magic. It was so basic that it couldn't even be called magic. In addition, basically, most of the servants also had the ability to manipulate mana, so it was estimated that it was useless, right? Therefore, from the perspective of a magician, Noah was really not a good magician. However, the extraordinary mana still brought Ryder a great improvement in combat power. With Ryder's help, Noah still had some confidence in his victory. Thinking of this, Noah got up and glanced around the room. Naturally, there was no one else in the room. However, with his excellent sensing ability, coupled with the master and servant contract between him and Ryder, Noah was still aware of the existence of the beautiful banshee. Ryder, are you here? As soon as this sentence fell, a burst of spiritual energy like mist emerged from the corner of Noah's room. Within the fog, Ryder's figure gradually appeared. His face was still expressionless, neither happy nor sad. His eyes, which were tightly covered by the blindfold, were clearly focused on Noah. "Master, do you have any instructions?" "It's more like a question than an instruction, right?" Noah said helplessly. "I say, Ryder, don't tell me you've been waiting here all night?" Ryder nodded matter-of-factly. "Now the Holy Grail War may begin at any time. Other than Master, others may have summoned servants. Then, it's not impossible that there are people around who are targeting Master. Although what you said makes sense." Noah scratched his cheek. "But don't you need to sleep?" "Originally, servants are all spirits, so we can also spiritualize so that ordinary people can't find us. And we don't need to sleep," Ryder said unhurriedly. "If I don't have enough mana, I can still sleep and reduce my daily activities to avoid unnecessary consumption of mana. But because of Master, my mana is abundant and I don't need to purposely avoid consuming mana. So it's only right that I stay by Master's side." Hearing Ryder's words, Noah couldn't refute it. After all, Ryder has been staying in Noah's room all night to guard Noah. Since servants don't need to sleep, Noah can't find a reason to refuse. In other words, Noah has had many experiences of sleeping with women under the same roof. Now being guarded by Ryder all night, if Ryder directly appeared, then Noah would be more or less not used to it. But Ryder has been maintaining her spiritualization and did not appear, so Noah can't help it. "Well, I can't argue with you." Noah can only shrug, lift the quilt, and get up. "Go and fill your stomach first. Later, I will take you around the city to see if you can find the traces of other masters. And by the way, see if there is any useful information." Ryder nodded without any objection. His body once again transformed into a puff of mist and disappeared from the spot. In the case of spiritualization, Ryder is equivalent to a ghost. Except for the other servants, no one else can see the existence of Ryder. However, with the help of his sensing ability, Noah sensed that Ryder had been following him. Only then did he feel relieved and opened the door and walked out. Today, Noah didn't get up as early as yesterday. So when Noah came out of the apartment, the street was already full of pedestrians. Under such circumstances, Noah walked in the direction of the restaurant and said softly, "Ryder, if you find anything unusual, then let me know." "Understood." Ryder's voice seemed to only ring in Noah's ears, and it went directly into Noah's ears. Noah smiled and felt his body a little. Ryder has a ++ level magic power. However, that A++ level magic power was basically absorbed from Noah's body. In other words, this level of magic power is almost equivalent to the magic power that Noah needs to consume. Generally, if a servant has this level of magic power, then the master can lie on the ground for a long time without being able to get up. However, with Noah's level of magic power, although this consumption is not said to be a drop in the bucket, it is not painful. Noah's magic power is extremely huge, so huge that it can be described as vast. With this level of magic power, the self-recovery of the magic power is naturally very fast. So Noah can only feel the magic power in his body flowing through the channel established by the contract between the master and servant to Ryder's body. At the same time, the magic power that flowed out of his body is recovered by more than half in an instant. It is not painful at all. My magic power will probably be the key to this Holy Grail War. Right? Noah's mood is more or less a little happy. After all, he has already won at the starting line. Not long after, Noah saw the restaurant he came to yesterday. Just when Noah planned to go directly in the direction of the restaurant, Noah inadvertently caught a glimpse of a scene on the sidewalk opposite the restaurant, which made him stop in his tracks. There, a girl with long black hair slightly over her shoulders, wearing a high school uniform and carrying a school bag in her hand, was standing in front of a flower bed. She has been looking around, as if she was looking for something. Seeing the girl, Noah was surprised. The child yesterday? Surprisingly, it is Tong Ying. Seeing that Tong Ying seems to have been looking around, looking for something, with a somewhat worried look, Noah frowned subconsciously. Could it be that she has encountered some trouble again? This time Noah guessed wrong. The next moment, Tong Ying finally saw Noah in the distance. Her eyes lit up, and a slightly relieved expression appeared on her pretty face. Seeing this, Noah was puzzled. Could it be that she is looking for me? Tong Ying used her actions to answer the doubts in Noah's heart. After hesitating for a moment, there was some struggle in her eyes. Finally, Tong Ying seemed to have gathered her courage, lifted her feet, and walked in the direction of Noah. At this time, Noah was not sure that the other party was looking around to find him. That would be too stupid. At this moment, Noah was not in a hurry to leave. Looking at the gradually approaching Tong Ying, there was a patient smile on his face. On the other side, Tong Ying, who came in front of Noah, was a little at a loss. She froze there, her eyes glanced at Noah, and then looked away. She wanted to say something, but it seemed that she could not say anything. She looked very embarrassed and helpless. Noah was almost amused. What's wrong? Tong Ying became even more nervous when she heard this. In the next moment, Tong Ying mustered up her courage and said these words. Please, please touch me. Chapter 706. Please, please touch me. When such a sentence burst out of Tong Ying's mouth, the intriguing expression on Noah's face froze. Noah almost wondered if there was something wrong with his ears. And around them, those passers-by who just happened to pass by looked at Noah and Tong Ying in amazement. After a while, some people started to talk about it. Some looked at Tong Ying and showed some regret, as if they had witnessed something very rare and precious being ruined. And the eyes that looked at Noah became contemptuous. These contemptuous eyes directly made Noah react, and the corner of his eyes twitched when he looked at Tong Ying. What did you just say? Tong Ying seemed to realize what she had said, and her pretty face was completely red, and she shook her head in panic. No, it's not like that. I just want you to touch me. No. I just want you to touch me like you did yesterday. Also no. I. Under the strange eyes of the passers-by around and Noah's speechless gaze, Tong Ying became more and more flustered, and even became incoherent, and couldn't even speak clearly. Noah rubbed his eyebrows and put his hand on Tong Ying's shoulder. Well, calm down first, don't panic. Under the voice of Noah, Tong Ying finally regained some calmness. When she realized how easy it was to misunderstand what she had just said, her pretty face was so red that it could cook eggs. And she spoke in a mosquito's voice. I didn't mean that. I know. Noah smiled helplessly. So, what exactly do you want to say? Being asked by Noah like this, Tong Ying didn't know what to say. She looked like she was in a difficult position. Tong Ying just wanted Noah to touch her, to see if it was because of Noah that the power in her body that had been protecting her suddenly recovered. As a result, if she expressed it verbally, wouldn't it be to let Noah touch her? Therefore, Tong Ying's words were not wrong. It was just that the way she expressed it was enough to make people think of Pian. Noah could only sigh. You just said to touch you like yesterday. Is there something wrong with your foot again? Hearing this, Tong Ying was startled, and then she reacted and nodded. Yes, that's it. When she said this, Tong Ying's voice was getting lower and lower, and even her head was lowered, trying to hide the guilt in her eyes. That was the guilt towards Noah. To be more precise, it should be said that Tong Ying felt guilty about the fact that she lied to Noah. After all, Noah had helped Tong Ying twice, and it was very likely that he was the reason why the power in Tong Ying's body recovered, giving Tong Ying a glimmer of hope that she would not be forced to go to hell. For such a person who had shown her pure kindness for the first time in 10 years, Tong Ying had lied. That was why she felt guilty. Noah clearly caught a trace of guilt in Tong Ying's eyes, and his heart moved slightly. Although he didn't know what Tong Ying was planning to do, that was not a reason for Noah to refuse. At least, Noah still believed that the girl in front of him, whom he had only met 3 times, was not the kind of person who would plot against him or have any ideas. Therefore, Noah pretended not to see the guilt in Tong Ying's eyes and shrugged. In that case, let me take a look for you again. After saying that, Noah stretched out his hand and supported Tong Ying. Suddenly being held by Noah, Tong Ying exclaimed, and when she realized that Noah was close to her, her face turned red again. There's something wrong with your foot, isn't there? Noah directly interrupted Tanjing. Then let me help you. Without any explanation, Noah supported Tanjing and moved in the direction of yesterday's flower garden. He asked Tanjing to sit down, squatted down, and put the girl's foot on his knee. Let me see. Seeing Noah's serious expression helping her check yesterday's injured foot, the guilt in Tanjing's eyes became even stronger. The other party had helped him out of the kindness of his heart, but he had purposely approached the other party for a certain purpose, and even lied about it. Tanjing only felt that she was a bad woman. However, Tanjing couldn't defend herself. Because if not, there would be a day when Jian Tonging would still be pushed into the abyss of hell under the persecution of Jian Tong's dirty inkstone. Tonging could only lower her head with a heart full of guilt. She didn't even dare to look at Noah. However, when she lowered her head, Tanjing immediately saw it. She saw that on the back of Noah's left hand, there was a sword-shaped vermilion mark surrounded by two snakes. In an instant, Tanjing opened her eyes wide, and after confirming that the mark on the back of Noah's hand was indeed not her mistake, she bit her lip and turned her head away, trying to pretend that she didn't notice it. On the other hand, Noah didn't pay special attention to Tanjing's performance, but just like yesterday, he injected magic into Tanjing's ankle, clearly feeling that Noah was injecting magic into her body. Although the emotions in her heart became quite complicated because of Noah's guilt and seeing Noah's command spell, Tanjing still couldn't help showing a relieved expression. Under such circumstances, Noah continued to inject magic into Tanjing's ankle, and when he felt that it was almost time, just as he was about to stop, a hurried footstep sounded beside him. Sakura. With the sound of such a shout, the full appearance of the owner of the hurried footsteps was also imprinted in the eyes of Noah and Tanjing. It was a girl about the same age as Tanjing. The girl was wearing a thick red coat, and inside, she seemed to be wearing the same school uniform as Tanjing, and she had the same long black hair as Tanjing. However, this girl's long black hair was much longer than Tanjing's, and it was tied into a double ponytail hairstyle. Even so, the two ponytails were hanging down, almost reaching her waist. Seeing the girl running over with hurried footsteps, Tanjing was surprised. Fukasaka-senpai? On the other side, Noah also noticed the girl called Fukasaka by Tanjing, and suddenly narrowed his eyes. Only because from the other party, Noah felt the existence of magic. Master. Ryder's voice also entered Noah's ears. That person is magician. Noah nodded silently. The reason why Ryder would remind him was very simple. As long as it was magician, it was very likely that he was the master chosen by the Holy Grail. It was that simple. However, Noah didn't do anything, quietly released Tanjing's foot, and stood up. Then, the girl called Fukasaka by Tanjing directly passed by Noah and came to Tanjing's side, took Tanjing's hand, and protected the confused Tanjing behind her. Facing Noah, her eyes were full of vigilance. Fukasaka-senpai? Tanjing made a strange sound. What's wrong with you? The girl called Osaka didn't pay attention to Tosakura's question. She still protected Tosakura behind her. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Noah, and her expression was full of vigilance and seriousness. What do you want to do to this child? It seems that the girl in front of him was aware that Noah injected magic into Tanjing's body, and thought that Noah was going to do something to Tanjing, so she rushed over in a panic and made such a move. Understanding this, Noah raised his eyebrows and pretended to be puzzled. I didn't do anything? The girl named Fukasaka stared at Noah intently and didn't speak, but the distrust in her eyes told Noah that she didn't take his words seriously at all. Especially after catching a glimpse of the command seal on the back of Noah's left hand. The girl named Fukasaka's expression became more serious, and even a little heavy. She gritted her teeth and stared at Noah, as if she was ready to deal with Noah's attack at any time, and her body was tense. The other party was aware of Noah's identity as the master who participated in the Holy Grail War. Noah also looked at the girl and found it after a while. There was a bruise-like mark on the back of the girl's hand. Chapter 707. In Fuyuki City, there are only 7 masters who can participate in the Holy Grail War. However, that refers to only 7 masters who can summon a servant. And if they haven't summoned a servant and become a master, then the predecessor of the command seal, that is the sacred mark, does not stipulate that only 7 people can have it. The Holy Grail in Fuyuki City is like this. The sacred mark is given to all who are qualified to become a master. After gathering 7 masters, even if there is a sacred mark, that person can no longer summon a servant and become a master. Noah has successfully summoned Rider, so he doesn't have to worry about this problem anymore. In front of him, there is a bruise on the back of the girl named Yuosaka's hand. That's obviously the sacred mark. In other words, the girl who suddenly appeared in front of him and has been staring at Noah with vigilant eyes is not only a magician, but also a master candidate. It is very likely that she is Noah's future enemy. Noah clearly felt that the aura of Rider, who was in the spiritual form, became dangerous little by little. Obviously, Rider also found the sacred mark on the back of the girl named Yuosaka's hand. Moreover, it seems that he has regarded her as a threat and is ready to deal with her in advance. At that moment, Noah used the contract between him and Rider to directly give Rider an order in his heart. Don't act rashly, not to mention that this is the street. It's not suitable to fight. Even if the other party is not a formal master, there is no reason to fight at this time. It seems that he is aware of Noah's order. Rider's aura became more and more dangerous, slightly stagnant, and gradually subsided. However, Rider's reaction seems to have attracted the attention of the girl named Yuosaka. A pair of beautiful eyes gradually became heavy, her lips were tightly bit, and she stared at Noah. She was simply guarding against Noah's appearance. Sister Yuosaka. Kirin Sakura also seemed to have found that the girl named Yuosaka had some misunderstanding, and quickly said, "No. Noah-san didn't want to do anything to me. It's just that I sprained my ankle, and Noah-san is helping me." Sprained your ankle? The girl named Yuosaka was startled, but she didn't choose to believe Tosakura's words. She still stared at Noah with a serious face. In the eyes of the young girl, Rin and Osaka, Natsuki Sakura shouldn't have noticed what Noah had done to her. If a magician wanted to do something to a person, it would be very difficult to detect. In any case, Noah did inject magic power into Tsushiro's body just now. Therefore, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Noah had cast some magic on Tsushiro Sakura's body. One must always be on guard against others. Not to mention, the person they had to guard against was a magician who wouldn't hesitate to kill for the sake of developing magic. Rin Enbin took a deep breath and continued to stare at Noah. He didn't even turn his head as he spoke to Tosakura. "Xiaoying, go to school first." Tongying was stunned for a moment before realizing something. She looked at Noah and then at Rin Tozaka and spoke uneasily. "Tenosaka-senpai. Girl, you should leave first." Noah spoke, interrupting Tongying. "Don't worry, I won't eat you. I won't do anything to your Tenosaka-senpai." "Era, you're really confident." Rin Enbin smiled, but there wasn't much of a smile in her eyes. "Do you think you've got me?" "I didn't say that." Noah spread his hands. "So you can think whatever you want." Seeing that Noah was still acting like he wasn't worried about what he was going to do, Ryu Isaka was furious. He deliberately raised his voice and said to Tosakura, "That's right, Xiaoying, you don't have to worry. I won't do anything to your Noah-san." Although she said that, the dangerous atmosphere between Noah and Rin Enbin could be felt by Tsushiro Sakura no matter how slow she was. But Tsushiro Sakura couldn't say anything. After all, if the two involved let Tsushiro Sakura leave, then Tsushiro Sakura had no reason to continue to stay here, right? After struggling for a while, Tsushiro Sakura looked at Noah, hesitated for a moment, and squeezed out such a sentence. "That can I ask you for help tomorrow?" Hearing Tsushiro Sakura's words, Noah and Rin Enbin were both stunned. "You mean?" Noah said with some uncertainty. "Tomorrow, let me help you look at your foot injury again?" Yes. Tsushiro Sakura was a little hopeful, but also a little uneasy. "Did I give you any trouble?" "Trouble?" Noah smiled bitterly. "That won't happen, as long as you don't mind." "Xiaoying." Rin Enbin was suddenly anxious. Sashiro Sakura just wanted to stay away from the master of the Holy Grail War. In front of her to avoid being harmed. Why did she jump into the fire pit herself? Rin Enbin was not Sashiro Sakura. Not only was she a proper and excellent magician, but because she grew up in Fuyuki City, and her magic family had a great relationship with the Holy Grail War, in this land, she knew very well about the Holy Grail War. Therefore Rin Enbin also knew how dangerous a master was to the residents of Fuyuki City. As mentioned before, servants were originally heroic spirits that existed as spirits. Just like how people eat meat to supplement their nutrition, spirits can also use magic to manifest in the world, and use magic to manifest their power. Although ordinary people don't have magic, the essence of magic is life. Because of this, in the past Holy Grail War, there were many examples of masters taking servants to attack the residents of Fuyuki City, absorbing the residents' life and soul, and then turning it into magic. When Rin Enbin saw the command seal on the back of Noah's hand, he knew that Noah was a master. To be honest, Rin Enbin was very surprised to meet a master before the Holy Grail War started. But although he was surprised, Rin Enbin would not let the other party do whatever he wanted in his territory. Especially if the other party still intended to make a move on Tong Ying, his junior sister, then he could not just sit back and watch. Even if Rin Enbin wasn't a master and didn't have a servant, it was the same. However, before Rin Enbin could say anything, Sashiro Sakura slightly bowed to Rin Enbin, and with one sentence, she stopped Rin Enbin from speaking. Enbin-senpai, Mr. Noah is really not a bad person, so please don't make things difficult for him. After that, Sashiro Sakura bowed to Noah again, then lifted her feet and left the scene. So only Noah and Rin Enbin were left standing in the same place, staring at each other. No one spoke. What's your goal? After a while, Rin Enbin said this bluntly. Don't tell me that you're just kind enough to take care of people you don't know. As a magician, that kind of thing should have been thrown into the trash long ago. Magicians were a bunch of lunatics. This was the truth. It didn't mean that magicians were mentally ill. But, in terms of values, magicians were different from ordinary people. In order to hide their magic, magicians would kill without hesitation. In order to reach the origin, magicians were willing to do anything. They were just a bunch of lunatics. Therefore, Rin Enbin's words were not wrong. I don't even know if I'm a good person. Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Rin Enbin with a smile. But if magicians aren't good people, then you should be included, right? What? As a magician? Don't tell me you're a good senior who cares about your junior? Whether I am or not, that's not up to you to decide. Rin Enbin looked straight at Noah. Her expression was unprecedentedly serious. I'm only telling you, don't have any ideas about that kid, or else, even if you're the master, I won't let this go. After saying this, Rin glanced at Noah, shook her head and left without looking back, her two ponytails fluttering in the wind. Seeing this, Noah could only pout and smile. Unfortunately, even though I know a little magic, I don't think of myself as a magician. Even if I'm not a good person, at least I'm not a bad person. Chapter 708. After the episode between Rin and Osaka and Tosaka, Noah ate breakfast in the restaurant, bought a few sandwiches, and took them with him. After that, he strolled around the entire Fuyuki City. Although Fuyuki City is not a particularly prosperous metropolis, compared with Sanyo City, which Noah has been to before, at least it's not located in the outskirts of the mountain village. It's much better than Sanyo City. Therefore, it's unrealistic to visit the entire Fuyuki City in one day. Yesterday, Noah just sat in the car and roughly walked around the entire Fuyuki City. Today, he had to take Ryder to familiarize himself with the terrain of Fuyuki City and see if there are any problems. Naturally, he couldn't do it as easily as yesterday. Noah brought a few sandwiches with him because he felt that he didn't have the time to sit down and eat leisurely. Therefore, this stroll went directly from morning to night. The sky gradually darkened. Looking at the sky, Noah swallowed the last bite of the sandwich and shook his head helplessly. Sure enough, if I want to investigate the terrain and intelligence in such detail, one day is too much for me. With that said, Noah looked ahead, and the corners of his mouth raised. Well, the last stop is here, so it's still within my plan. In front of Noah, there was a relatively large sacred hall surrounded by an iron fence. Under the moonlight, it gave off a rather sacred atmosphere. That's the church in Fuyuki City, right? Instead of calling it a church, it's better to call it the Holy Church. It has been said before that the so-called Holy Grail War is actually the Holy Grail that was identified by the Holy Grail as a genuine product by the Holy Grail. Under the supervision of the Holy Grail, the Holy Grail is very likely to be genuine. Since there is also a Holy Grail War in Fuyuki City, there must be a supervisor from the Holy Church. And there is no doubt that the supervisor is now in the church in front of Noah. After becoming a master, almost every master would come here to meet the overseer. After all, no matter what, the other party was in charge of supervising the progress of this Holy Grail War and witnessing the emergence of the victor. Furthermore, if he lost his servant, the master could come here to seek protection from the other participants who wanted to eliminate the source of the problem. It was worth mentioning here that a master participating in the Holy Grail War was not considered a loss even if he lost his servant. As long as the master still had the command incantation on him, then even if the servant that he had summoned left, he could still contract with another servant and have a chance to make a comeback. As for what kind of servant to contract with, that was a question. The lucky ones could meet the servant who left before the master and form a contract with the servant. The smart ones could also make a comeback by instigating the servant of another. There were all kinds of methods. Therefore, the masters who participated in the Holy Grail War would generally be ruthless and not give other masters a chance to make a comeback. Those who did not want to die could only choose to give up and escape to the church to seek protection. The standard to be able to achieve victory in the Holy Grail War was that after the other 6 servants had all left, the master who brought the last remaining servant. Once the other 6 servants had all left, then the Holy Grail would descend and fall into the hands of the victor. This was the saying of the Holy Grail War on the surface. Looking at the church under the moonlight, Noah did not have the slightest intention of going in to meet the overseer. It feels like there is an ominous aura everywhere. Yes. In Noah's opinion, the church under the moonlight, which seemed to be sacred and inviolable, was filled with an ominous aura. Noah couldn't help but sneer at this. It seems that the church is not just here to act as a supervisor. How ironic. At this time, Ryder's voice came into Noah's ears. Master, why didn't you get rid of the backup master during the day? Hearing this, Noah was silent for a while and sighed. Ryder, do you think it is necessary to get rid of the other party? That girl seems to be quite an excellent magician. Ryder said. If a servant was summoned and became a master, then that person may become a threat to the master. So instead of leaving such an excellent magician as a hidden danger, it is better to get rid of the other party first, right? Noah said calmly. Ryder, in the future, don't mention this kind of thing. Hearing Noah's calm but unquestionable words, Ryder was silent. Maybe logically speaking, that is the right thing to do, but for me, it is more important to follow my heart when doing things. Noah turned around and looked at the night sky outside. If that was a person that I despised, then I wouldn't mind doing so. But that girl, in order to protect her junior, did not hesitate to confront me before I became a master. Undoubtedly, she knew that I am a master, and undoubtedly, she knew that I have a servant by my side. She still did it. If she did not have the resolve to die, it would be impossible for her to do so. So I rather admire people like that. Ryder, do you think that as long as you can achieve victory, you have to resort to unscrupulous means? Noah shrugged. Unfortunately, that is not in line with my plan of action. So Ryder, if you feel that you can't get along with me, then I don't mind leaving. No, there is no such thing. Ryder's voice sounded quietly. Unscrupulous means or honorable means, I am just a servant. I will only listen to my master's orders in battle. As long as you are my master, then I will not have any objections to my master's plan of action. Is that so? Noah smiled faintly. Then, I will have to trouble you to be willful with me, Ryder. Yes, Ryder had just replied when his voice seemed to be blocked by something. He paused for a moment, then spoke again. Master. This time, Ryder's voice was filled with seriousness. Noah slowly pulled his hand out of his pocket and turned around to look at the top of a tree beside him. Yo. Following this casual and frivolous greeting, Noah's gaze landed on the top of the tree. Unknowingly, a figure had appeared there. It is very dangerous for a person to come to a place like this at this time of night. In many ways. After saying such a sentence, a man suddenly appeared on the top of the tree. One of them was a man wearing blue tights and carrying a red spear on his back. His eyes were like that of a ferocious beast staring at its prey. His eyes were flashing with a ferocious blood-red color that represented ferocity. Seeing the red spear, Noah's eyes narrowed. At this moment when the Holy Grail War was about to begin, in this modern Fuyuki city, a man with a fierce aura like a beast and an extremely rich trace of magic was holding an ancient spear? How could he be an ordinary person? Noah could only think of one possibility for the identity of the newcomer. Lancer's servant. Oh, you have a keen sense. The Lancer servant was like a feather, standing on the top of the tree as if he was weightless. He turned the red spear in his hand and pointed it in the direction of Noah. No. To be more precise, it should be said that it was pointing in the direction of a position behind Noah. So which servant is that big sister over there? Now, there was no need to doubt the identity of the other party. Only a servant could see the spiritual servant. What? At this point, you still choose to keep it a secret? Lancer's face became a little bit ferocious and happy. Then let me try it myself. Chapter 709. Then let me try it myself. Saying such a sentence, Lancer smiled from the bottom of his heart, and slowly raised the red spear in his hand. A layer of crimson magic power suddenly began to surge violently on the spear body, causing the surface of the spear body to surge with crimson flames that gradually rose up. Looking at Lancer, who was holding a spear covered in scarlet flames, and feeling the power rising from Lancer's body, a solemn expression slowly surfaced on Noah's face. Just by feeling the magic and power of Lancer, Noah knew that this servant, who was a great hero in his previous life, was definitely not easy to deal with. At least, he couldn't use his authority, and could only use his enhanced magic to deal with Lancer. Even Noah himself felt that if he fought against Lancer, the outcome would be very suspenseful. After summoning Ryder yesterday, Noah originally planned to find time to compare notes with Ryder today, to see how much he could fight against a servant without using his authority. Now it seems that he didn't need to do it himself, but he could also see the strength of these servants. At that moment, Noah didn't hesitate to take a step back. Almost at the same time, a fog emerged in front of Noah. Holding a short sword that was connected to a chain in his hand, Ryder appeared from the fog. He raised his head slightly and looked directly at Lancer with his blindfolded eyes. Traces of magic began to flow out from his eyes. Finally, the magic surged onto the chain of the short sword, causing the tip of the sword to flash with a cold light. A short sword connected to a chain? Lancer raised his eyebrows. It seems that you're not archer or caster, and you don't look like Saber, and you don't have a bit of arrogance, so you can't be Berserker. The most important thing is that I have already fought Berserker, so you're either Rider or Assassin, right? Just like the meaning of the words, each servant has its own characteristics. Saber's weapon is undoubtedly a sword. Lancer's weapon is undoubtedly a spear. Archer's weapon is undoubtedly a bow, which has the ability to attack from a distance. The characteristic of a rider was that it was driven by a famous mount. Caster, magician, can use magic that is beyond the reach of humans in this era. Assassin is good at hiding in the dark and making a surprise attack. Berserker is a berserker who has no sense at all. Therefore, as long as they meet face to face, they can probably judge the servant's rank, just like how Noah recognized Lancer at a glance. Well, no matter what, let me see your strength first. Lancer's palm slowly rubbed on the spear, and when the magical power on the spear became more and more turbulent, Lancer suddenly shouted. In the next moment, Lancer's figure disappeared from the canopy. Ryder, who was holding the chain dagger, reacted in an instant and raised the weapon in his hand. At this moment, Lancer's figure flashed in front of Ryder. The spear in his hand slightly trembled, and a few bright red spear danced in the air. Shio dash. The tip of the crimson spear transformed into a bright red shadow. It was cunningly and viciously stabbing towards Ryder's neck, aiming straight for his throat. That speed was simply like lightning. In the face of Lancer's fast attack, Ryder's figure retreated, and it was as if he disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Lancer pulled up a smirk, stepped on the ground, and disappeared in a loud sound. In the blink of an eye, Ryder and Lancer disappeared. Of course, the two servants didn't really disappear, but because their speed was too fast, the eyes couldn't follow. Noah couldn't help but be surprised. He quickly concentrated on his sensing ability, and finally caught the battle in front of him. Ding ding dang dang. In front of him, there was a burst of sparks and continuous crisp sound of collision. Both servants were displaying extreme speed that ordinary people couldn't match. Even the eyes couldn't follow the amazing speed of the battle. Shio dash. In that world of extreme speed, the red spear tore through the obstacles in the air, and with a sharp sound, it pierced out like lightning. Ding. The chainsword was also waved at the same speed, blocking the lightning-like spear, causing a crisp sound. Good speed. Lancer raised the corner of his mouth and shouted loudly, "How about this?" After that, Lancer's palm suddenly hit the tip of the spear in his hand, and the spear in his hand turned into a bright red arrow, shooting toward Ryder's neck. Looking at the tip of the spear shooting towards him, Ryder just blindly retreated. His feet stepped on the ground, creating a crisp sound. His body was like a stream of light as he shot backwards. Seeing Ryder's speed increase, Lancer also let out a low shout. His toes tapped on the ground, and his body was like a leaf in the wind, quickly flashing toward Ryder. Lancer's relentless pursuit caused Ryder to suddenly stop in his tracks. His body spun in the air, and the chain dagger in his hand rotated half a circle. After fully leveraging the momentum of the dagger, it was mixed with an incomparably sharp chi as it pierced towards Lancer. The sharp force coming from the front caused the long spear in Lancer's hand to suddenly turn. With a low roar, the tip of the long spear was instantly wrapped by a faint airflow, causing the surrounding air to appear as though it was being torn apart. After a slight pause, it carried a piercing sound as it heavily struck the chain short sword. Ding! A loud sound of metal colliding rang in the air. It has to be said that the gap between Lancer and Ryder was indeed very big. Originally, Ryder was not the type that was outstanding in close combat. His real strength was in the use of his mounts, skills, and noble phantoms. On the contrary, as one of the three knights, Lancer's close combat was one of the strongest among all the servants. Under such circumstances, with a crisp sound, Lancer directly hit the chain sword in Ryder's hand. The sharp sword suddenly flew to the sky. After losing his weapon, Ryder's face could not help but slightly change. This made Lancer smile. The spear in his hand shook, and the sharp sound of the spear breaking through the air rang again. The red tip of the spear turned into a red lightning, tearing the air, and went straight for Ryder's neck. In the distance, Noah, who saw this scene with his own eyes, narrowed his eyes, and magic slightly emerged from his body. However, just when Noah was about to make a move, he caught a glimpse of a scene that made Noah's figure stop. Chi! He saw that the chain sword that was just hit by Lancer suddenly flew back, with a sharp edge, and stabbed Lancer's defenseless back. Lancer, who was about to give Ryder a fatal blow, narrowed his eyes, and then he finally found out. In Ryder's hand, one of the chains was pulled by him, creating a clear sound of collision. Like a dancing whip, it caused the short sword connected to the chain to spin around and explosively shoot back. The sudden sharp attack from behind made Lancer no longer care about attacking. The magic in his body surged, and the surface of his body was covered with a layer of bright red gauze, making Lancer's blue bodysuit a little bit of a bright red color. In an instant, Lancer only had time to prepare so much. When Lancer used a lot of magic to strengthen his body's defense, the short sword that was shot toward Lancer was like a silver light, fiercely falling on Lancer's back. Dang! A crisp sound rang out in the air. Chapter 710. Dang! A loud sound was heard. Lancer's body seemed to have been hit by something heavy. After rolling on the ground, he turned over and knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Feeling the sharp pain from his back, Lancer raised his head and looked at Ryder, who was holding the chain dagger again. The veins on his temples were popping out. This kind of strength, you must have used some kind of monstrous strength skill, right? Lancer guessed correctly. Ryder had indeed used his monstrous strength skill at the last moment to send Lancer flying. Lancer suddenly laughed when he saw Ryder's silent agreement. I thought you wouldn't be too difficult to deal with since you're not Saber. I've underestimated you. However, since you're able to fight me to this extent, I can confirm that you're not an assassin who only knows how to hide and play tricks. You're Ryder, right? Hearing this, Ryder continued to ignore Lancer. He was still as silent as ever. On the other hand, Noah took the opportunity to see Lancer's ability value. Job level, Lancer Master. Real name. Attribute. Order mean ability value, strength, B durability, C agility, A magic power, cluck, E relic, B job level skill, magic power. C can nullify magic spells caused by chance below 2 stanzas. Can't defend against magic spells and ritual incantations above 2 stanzas. Preservation skill, battle continuation. Even in a desperate battle, they could still display astonishing tenacity and tenacity. They would not die easily in battle. As long as they did not suffer fatal injuries, they would be able to survive. Even if they were on the verge of death, they would still be able to move and fight. Reset stance. See the ability to leave the battlefield in a battle. It can return the battle to the beginning in an unfavorable situation, and return the condition of the skill to the initial value. Rune. Rune B has the ability to use Rune magic. It can be used in various situations. It can also upgrade a B level ability value to A level in a very short period of time. Protection from arrows. B as long as the sniper was within sight, no matter what kind of weapon was thrown at him, he would be able to catch it with his naked eye and respond accordingly. As long as it was a throw-type attack, he would be able to dodge it even if it was a relic. However, it was not suitable for long-distance direct attacks, nor was it suitable for large-scale attacks. Even if he was unable to see the target with his eyes, he would be able to deal with most of the flying weapons. Divinity. B. The higher the level, the more material the blood of the gods was mixed with. Level B was already considered to have a relatively high level of divinity, and the relationship and bloodline with the gods were quite strong. Should I say, as expected of Lancer? Among the 7 servants, Saber was generally considered to be the strongest. This was because in order to become a Saber, one had to be a heroic spirit with the highest level of ability points other than mana points. It was said to be one of the most demanding ability points among all the job ranks. Lancer was second only to Saber. Not to mention that all ability points must be excellent, dexterity must be particularly high, and it must be good at using the range of shooting and speed to escape. Therefore, those who could become Lancer were generally heroic spirits who were born as knights. Indeed, Lancer's dexterity was already at the highest level of level A. No wonder he could catch up with Ryder, who was also at level A in dexterity, and even seemed to have an advantage in terms of instantaneous speed. After learning about Lancer's ability points, Noah was surprised that he could see Lancer's skills. It was not a big deal to see the skills of the job ranks, but the skills were also one of the trump cards of the servants. How could Noah not be surprised that he could see it directly? What Noah didn't know was that it was only possible because of the superimposed assistance of his sensing ability and the overly vast magic power. For the average master, being able to see the servant's ability points and job ranks was the limit. However, even so, Noah could not see Lancer's noble phantasm. Obviously, the noble phantasm was the real trump card of the servants, and even Noah could not see it. At this time, Lancer stood up and pointed the red spear in his hand at Ryder, who had been silent. It seems that I need to show some of my real skills. After saying such a sentence, Lancer's eyes surged with red light, and the spear in his hand fiercely shook. A trace of mana was wrapped around the spear, and with a roaring sound, Lancer's figure burst toward Ryder's direction. This time, Lancer's speed increased by another level. Noah did not make a mistake in his judgment. In terms of instantaneous speed, Lancer was above Ryder. Ding! The chain dagger with the same trace of mana fiercely crossed the space and collided with the roaring red spear, causing sparks to fly in all directions. When the two collided, Ryder, who was at a disadvantage in close combat, was shocked and took a few steps back. Even the strength was a lot higher than before. It's not over yet. Lancer laughed, and his figure moved, leaving behind an afterimage. When he appeared again, he was already not far in front of Ryder. The spear in his hand danced, and the red light danced in the air. He was cunningly and ruthlessly greeting Ryder's body. Chi. A trace of the spear appeared in the air, and like raindrops, it stabbed Ryder's body. Whoosh! At this moment, Ryder's figure seemed to be blurred, and with a speed that was not inferior to Lancer's, he dodged Lancer's sharp spear one by one, which made the red light in Lancer's eyes more intense, and the spear swept out like lightning, stabbing toward Ryder. Clang! Just when the red spear was about to hit Ryder, Ryder used the chain that was connected to the dagger in his hand, and forcibly wrapped it around Lancer's spear, and the spear was stopped. Obviously, Ryder used the monstrous strength skill again. However, at this moment, Lancer's aura suddenly soared, and the veins on his temples bulged. A majestic magic power condensed on the spear, and like a surging flame, it moved around, and with a fierce shake, it shook Ryder's chain back. Lancer's sudden attack caused Ryder to frown slightly. With a flick of his hand, the chain in his hand narrowly deflected the tip of Lancer's spear, causing the sharp tip of the spear to stop less than 5 centimeters away from his eyes. It looked extremely dangerous. Soon after, Ryder's figure flashed slightly as he nimbly retreated a dozen steps. This caused the malevolence in Lancer's eyes to become even denser. A moment later, he finally let out a sinister smile. With a tremble of his body, he once again disappeared into thin air. At the same time, Ryder's feet suddenly moved half a step to the left. Just as Ryder's feet moved horizontally, the space behind him suddenly trembled. A crimson spear pierced through like lightning, brushing past Ryder's shoulder as it flew past. If Ryder hadn't moved half a step, the spear wouldn't have brushed past Ryder's shoulder, but instead, it would have pierced Ryder's head. However, even so, that crimson-red spear suddenly trembled, abruptly bending into a strange arc. It fiercely bounced towards Ryder's head. Swish! Ryder's expression didn't change, and he tilted his head back, and the spear flew past his face. Immediately after, Ryder's body spun in the air at high speed like a top, and he kicked out a powerful whip kick, which fiercely hit the side. Pung! With a kick, Lancer's figure flashed and appeared there. On the other hand, Ryder was forced to take a few steps back due to the recoil from Lancer's sudden appearance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.